Chapter 2457, Strange Mood in the Zhou family. Dugu Menghai decided that if he could prove that Feng Wu planned to usurp the throne, his crime wouldn't be so severe. However, Emperor Wu only smiled. "You don't like what those lines say, do you?" Dugu Menghai said, "Your Majesty, that proves she's a usurper." Emperor Wu didn't seem angry, but he suddenly kicked Dugu Menghai in the chest. He was displeased when he saw that Dugu Menghai didn't fly away. He said grimly, "Usurper? Then I'll be usurping my own throne. I wrote those words." Dugu Menghai was shocked. So was everyone else. Emperor Wu sneered at him, then looked over his shoulder at Lady Ling. Lady Ling was smiling now. Emperor Wu was so happy that he smiled for a split second as well. Dugu Menghai couldn't believe it. His Majesty was smiling? He had to be seeing things. However, when Emperor Wu turned around, he kicked Dugu Menghai again. "Your crime is punishable by death." Qin Yan. "Yes, Your Majesty. Dismiss him from his post. He'll never be employed as an officer ever again." Emperor Wu said coldly. "Yes." Emperor Wu stole a glance at Lady Ling. She was frowning and seemed worried. She was worried about her daughter because the crown prince was there, but she was only wearing a casual outfit and wasn't behaving like a noble young lady. But Emperor Wu took it as a sign that Lady Ling wasn't satisfied with the punishment Dugu Menghai received, although Dugu Menghai had almost fainted. Emperor Wu waved his hand. "Destroy his cultivation ability and break his legs. If the Dugu family dares to give him any help, they can go down with him." Qin Yan said, "Yes, Your Majesty." Gao almost felt sorry for Dugu Menghai. One shouldn't take lives on New Year's Eve, so Emperor Wu gave him a punishment that was worse than death. Dugu Menghai was dumbfounded. He knew that he would be punished and possibly demoted, but his family would ensure that he got his job back. However, what was happening was beyond his expectations. "Your Majesty!" Dugu Menghai wanted to beg for mercy, but Qin Yan hit him on the back of his neck, knocking him out. Qin Yan dragged him away after that. The 300 guards whom Dugu Menghai had brought here were filled with terror as well. Qin Yan took them away with him as well. As for what he would do with them, he wouldn't be much gentler than Qin Mo, the head of military intelligence. What happened to Dugu Menghai was confidential information, and the Zhou family wasn't notified. They were still waiting for more information. But the news never arrived. No news was bad news. Zhou Qingwan's heart began to sink. The party had been going on for hours, and it would soon be midnight. The guests were already thinking of leaving. But with the strange atmosphere in the manor, no one dared to bring it up. Tao Qingying tugged at Mrs. "Mother, I'm sure that His Royal Highness isn't coming. We can wait for news of Feng Wu back home. How about we leave now?" Chapter 2458, Humiliation. Tao Qingqing couldn't stand the suffocating atmosphere anymore. "Mrs." Tao still hesitated. Just then, the servants whom the other families sent out to gather information came back to deliver the news. "What?" The fireworks at the central square were set off under the order of young Lord Feng. Even Zhou Qingwan couldn't deny the fact that Feng Sun and the Crown Prince were best buddies. Those words came from His Royal Highness. OMG! What's that supposed to mean? Isn't it obvious? His Royal Highness is telling everyone he's in love with Feng Wu. Don't you see? Feng Wu is the one His Royal Highness is going to marry. Gosh, it can't be. I don't believe it. That may not be the case. If His Royal Highness really is confessing his love for Feng Wu, why didn't people of the Crown Prince's residence set off the fireworks? Why was it Northern Feng Mansion? Well, what does that mean? Hearing the conversation, Mrs. Dugu said, "It can't have been His Royal Highness's idea. I'm sure that it was young Lord Feng's own decision." But Tao Qingqing said, "But can those 100 million coins worth of gifts be from young Lord Feng as well? Does he have that much money?" Everyone fell silent. Yes, Northern Feng Mansion could afford it, but Feng Sun was no fool. Why would he spend so much of his own money to show Feng Wu that the crown was in love with her? Tao Qingyin grinned. That can be easily proven. If His Royal Highness didn't give permission, no one would dare to use those words. You've been guessing that the fireworks are from Feng Wu or young Lord Feng, but just wait until tomorrow. If Feng Wu and Feng Sun are both safe and sound tomorrow, that means that His Royal Highness gave his consent. What's more, His Royal Highness might even be the one who set off the fireworks. Do you agree with me? Tao Qinging didn't really like Feng Wu, but she disliked Zhuo Qingwan even more and would use every chance to annoy the sacred lady. Zhuo Qingwan stared coldly at Tao Qinging. She had heard everything Tao Qinging said. But because she was the sacred lady, she couldn't be bothered to quarrel with an ant. While she was staring at Tao Qinging stared back at her as well. You don't scare me. I'm from the Tao family, and I have amazing brothers. Bite me. The temperature around Zhuo Qingwan seemed to drop. Mrs. Tao was speechless. She was here to make friends, not enemies. Seeing how things were turning out, she had to leave. Mrs. Zhuo, I'm so sorry, but we need to go to Wandering Temple early in the morning, so we should leave now. The mention of Wandering Temple reminded everyone of the important event of the new year. Mrs. Dugu asked, did you get a place? Mrs. Tao said, yes, we were very lucky. We're going to be the 5th to pray at the temple this year, and we can't be late. See you later. Chapter 2459, Wandering Temple. Mrs. Tao nodded at Mrs. Mrs. Zhuo nodded back, her smile a little forced. It was the perfect excuse, and no one could stop her. Master Linghu of Wandering Temple was like a god to the people of the Zhenwu Empire. For a time, Master Linghu had lived in seclusion and wasn't known to the public. 13 years ago, the empire came under attack. At a critical juncture, he single-handedly killed the head of the Dongsang kingdom and stopped the enemy from advancing. He became the savior and protector of the empire. It was said that he could see everything in the past and future. It was also rumored that he was the most advanced cultivator in the Zhenwu Empire. And there was more. People believed that if they were the first precant at Wandering Temple in the new year, Master Linghu would give them an object personally blessed by him, and the person would be lucky for the whole year. Therefore, people fought head over heels for that opportunity every year. The Zhuo family was no exception. Mrs. Zhuo had visited Wandering Temple countless times. She thought that if Zhuo Qingwan could become the first precant, that would mean that she had been acknowledged by Master Linghu. With that, she would be even more likely to marry the crown prince. But she never succeeded. She spent a small fortune on donations to the temple, but the abbot told her that the first precant was always chosen by Master Linghu himself. It could be anybody. From second place onward, the sequence was decided by the amount of donations given. With what Mrs. Zhuo had spent, she would have taken 8th place. Mrs. Zhuo stormed off. 8th just wasn't good enough. But that place was soon filled. When Mrs. Zhuo regretted her decision and went back, she was already out of the competition. Mrs. Zhuo didn't know what to say. The good luck of the first precant is real, old Mrs. Gongsun said. My grandson had back luck for years, but then he was chosen. After that, he became very smart and is already in the top 3 in his class. She was talking about Gongsu Jia, who was indeed an impressive teenager. However, it was the first time people heard of the story behind it. I think that position belongs to Her Majesty the Empress Dowager this year. Her Majesty has been talking about it for a long time. Because of the change in subject, the atmosphere didn't feel so awkward anymore. Zhuo Qingwan went back to her phoenix yard. She knew that people had tried to change the subject to ease the tension, but she could see the pity in their eyes. Tiem the sacred lady. I don't need pity. Zhuo Qingwan gritted her teeth and hated Feng Wu even more. Meanwhile, in Fallen Star Yard. After taking care of Duga Menghai, Feng Wu was ready to ask everyone to leave because it was time for her mother's beauty sleep. But there was a tap on the door. Everyone was alarmed. More unexpected guests? Chapter 2460, Who's Master Linghu? Qiuling opened the door to find a smiling young monk outside. Feng Sun cried out, "Aren't you the little monk from Wandering Temple?" He knew the monk well. Whenever he went to Wandering Temple with Jun Linyuan, he never had the chance to meet Master Linghu. Every time, this little monk would take him to the gatehouse and force him to practice his cultivation there. It was one of Feng Sun's most painful memories. "Yuan Bao." Feng Sun rubbed the monk's smooth head. "I thought you never left the mountain. What are you doing here?" Wandering Temple. Feng Yanfeng, who had been lying forgotten in a corner, was shocked by the name. Was it the Wandering Temple? There was too much information for Feng Yanfeng to digest. The two elders were on Feng Wu's side, then there was the crown prince and even the emperor himself. What was going on? He had been about to pass out when the monk of Wandering Temple arrived. Master Linghu was about as famous as Emperor Wu and Jun Linyuan. Was he involved as well? The little monk greeted Feng Wu. "Miss Feng Wu, my master wants to invite you to visit our temple." Master Linghu? Feng Wu still held a grudge against that old monk. What does he want? Yuan Bao grinned. "My master wonders if you're interested in being the first precant." Feng Wu wasn't. She was more interested in smacking Master Linghu on the head. Had it not been for him, she wouldn't have to go through the 12 trials and fawn on Jun Linyuan. At that thought, she shook her head. "No." Elder Jing and Elder Grain were equally shocked. Although they had read information on what Feng Wu had done after she returned from Northern Border City, it was never mentioned that she was acquainted with Master Linghu. But it was such a sweet deal. Elder Jing pulled Feng Wu to the side, and Elder Grain smiled at Yuan Bao. Of course she's interested. He then gave Feng Wu a warning glance. "Silly girl, that's Master Linghu. What are you thinking?" Feng Wu didn't think much of it. She rolled her eyes at Elder Grain. "That old trickster will only set me up. Become the first precant? He's only trying to trick me again." Emperor Wu opened his mouth but didn't know what to say. The Empress Dowager had wanted to be the first precant. She went to see Master Linghu but was sent back without meeting the old man. She had wept in her palace, and Emperor Wu had offered to talk to the master himself. He did see Master Linghu after that, but the old monk only said no. Emperor Wu knew Master Linghu's true identity. Because of that, he felt so strange when he heard Feng Wu call him an old trickster. He stared at Feng Wu. Chapter 2461. Emperor Wu's Impression of Feng Wu. "Of course you should go. Why waste such a great opportunity?" Emperor Wu glanced at Feng Wu. "You have no idea how precious it is. People would kill for it." Hearing what Emperor Wu said, Feng Wu had to say yes, but she didn't look very happy. Emperor Wu was annoyed. "Why are you so reluctant? Do you know how much people would pay for that opportunity?" "Even I? No, I can't let her know. She'll laugh at me." Emperor Wu felt so frustrated as he went back to the palace. After some hesitation, he went to visit his mother. His wives were there as well. At this hour, they were still keeping the Empress Dowager company. Everyone was chatting happily except for the old lady. The consorts and Empress Dugu stood up to greet Emperor Wu. Emperor Wu waved at them. "How lively! What are you talking about?" Before Empress Dugu could answer, concubine Oriole said, "Your Majesty, we were talking about the sacred lady of the Zhou family. Is she really that amazing?" "The sacred lady? Zhou Qingwan, is it?" Emperor Wu knew more than his women and felt sorry for Zhou Qingwan. With the gates locked, no one except for Emperor Wu could come into the palace, so the women here couldn't get any information. Concubine Oriole had the voice of a singing bird, and her smile reminded Emperor Wu of Lady Ling. Because of that, Emperor Wu had favored her. Now that he had seen the real Lady Ling, however, Concubine Oriole didn't seem that pretty anymore. "Your Majesty, it's the sacred lady's birthday today. I heard that His Royal Highness was there as well." Concubine Oriole didn't sense the change in Emperor Wu's mood. She held his arm and leaned toward him. She heard that His Majesty didn't like Feng Wu, so she thought that he would like it if the Crown Prince and Zhou Qingwan were a couple. Before Emperor Wu could reply, Empress Dugu said, "I heard that as well." Of course, Empress Dugu would want Zhou Qingwan to marry Jun Linyuan. It would be like having an insider on Jun Linyuan's team. She heard? Emperor Wu and Gao exchanged glances. Concubine Oriole smiled. I think Miss Qingwan and His Royal Highness will make such a perfect couple. Don't you think so, Your Majesty? Emperor Wu could tell that Concubine Oriole and Empress Dugu were a team. He frowned. Don't you know that the Crown Prince is already engaged? Well, ever since the last time when Jun Linyuan talked about his engagement, the news had spread, but not many people believed it. Your Majesty, is Feng Wu really engaged to His Royal Highness? Concubine Oriole asked the million-dollar question. Hearing that, even the Empress Dowager was intrigued. As for what Emperor Wu thought of Feng Wu. Before, Feng Wu and Zhuo Qingwan were pretty much the same to him. Chapter 2462. Who is the most blessed child in the Empire? Because of the invitation from Master Ling Hu tonight, Emperor Wu preferred Feng Wu a little more. He was already leaning toward Feng Wu. He hadn't realized the change in his attitude, but as for the engagement, Emperor Wu put his hands behind his back and thought for a moment before he nodded. It's true. The engagement was never annulled. We can't have that. Concubine Oriole almost jumped to her feet. Your Majesty, we have to do something. The Empress Dowager glanced at her in approval, making a mental note to promote her when the time was right. But Emperor Wu was displeased. Nonetheless, he didn't let it show. Is that so? Why can't we have that? Concubine Oriole said, Your Majesty, Miss Qingwan is the daughter of the Zhuo family and the Sacred Lady of Firmament Palace. Apart from that, she's also a very capable cultivator, not to mention that she has the true phoenix blood. Your Majesty, if His Royal Highness's dragon bloodline is combined with the true phoenix blood, they'll have such amazing children. In comparison, Feng Wu has nothing. Yes, she can cultivate again, but so what? Even if we can look past her cultivation level and personality, she still doesn't have the true phoenix blood. Your Majesty, we have to cancel the engagement. Emperor Wu's gaze turned cold. How much did the Zhuo family pay you to speak up for them like that? Emperor Wu's face darkened. Your Majesty, I meant every word I said. Concubine Oriole dropped to her knees and trembled. That's enough. Finally, the Empress Dowager spoke. She glanced at Emperor Wu. Concubine Oriole only made a suggestion. There's no need to shout at her. She then had Emperor Wu sit down next to her. Junjun is old enough to get married and have children. As for who he should marry, it's not up to us to decide, the Empress Dowager said indifferently. Really? Who gets to make the decision, then? Emperor Wu smiled at her. The Empress Dowager said, Fates. Emperor Wu asked, How does that work? The Empress Dowager said, Master Ling Hu will know. I've been trying to become the first precant of the year to ask him, but... Emperor Wu glanced at his mother. If Master Ling Hu represented fate, then Zhuo Qingwan had already lost. Even as they were speaking, Feng Wu was on her way to see Master Ling Hu. The Empress Dowager said, Master Ling Hu said that he was going to keep that place for the most blessed child in the empire. I wonder who that is. Empress Dugu said, Maybe it's Qingwan. The Empress Dowager's eyes lit up. Really? Chapter 2463. He wasn't there? Empress Dugu smiled. When Qingwan came to see me earlier, she mentioned that she was going to Wandering Temple. So... The Empress Dowager's eyes lit up. She grabbed Empress Dugu's hand and said excitedly, If that's true, then she's definitely the most blessed girl in the empire. Master Ling Hu is never wrong. Emperor Wu found their conversation idiotic. He just didn't get it. Why was Zhuo Qingwan everywhere when they never saw her? For instance, Jun Linyuan was at Fallen Star Yard tonight, but the rumor was that he was madly in love with Zhuo Qingwan and would announce their engagement tonight. How unbelievable! Also, Feng Wu was invited by Master Ling Hu to be the first precant of the year, but everyone was saying that Zhuo Qingwan was the most blessed girl. Why? It seemed that Zhuo Qingwan had been very busy. Emperor Wu had thought highly of Zhuo Qinghuan before because of her true phoenix blood and the fact that she was the sacred lady of Firmament Palace. Now, however, he had a different opinion of her. He glanced at Gao. Gao immediately took the hint. The emperor wanted to know where the rumors came from. He wished Miss Zhuo good luck. While they were still chatting, Jun Wuxia came back. She had been invited to Zhuo Qinghuan's party tonight and had taken a walk afterward. Only then did she come back in a bad mood. She greeted Emperor Wu, Empress Dugu and the Empress Dowager, and was going to leave. Empress Dugu adored her daughter, so when she saw that Jun Wuxia looked upset, she couldn't help asking, "Xia, what's wrong? Weren't you at the birthday party? Did someone upset you? How was it? Did Jun Linyuan announce the engagement?" "Mother." Jun Wuxia didn't want to be reminded of what happened. It was such a humiliation. The Empress Dowager didn't really like Jun Wuxia, but she frowned when she heard the complaint. What happened? Did someone disrespect the crown prince at the party? All this time, Jun was the only one she cared about. Jun Wuxia said, "Who would dare do that? Obviously, it was my brother who did something." "Did His Royal Highness upset Miss Qinghuan?" Concubine Oriole asked. Everyone looked at Jun Wuxia expectantly. Jun Wuxia said, "Yes. Miss Qinghuan was so angry." The Empress Dowager's heart sank. Jun Wuxia said, "My brother was never there. No one knows where he was tonight. We searched everywhere, but we never found him." Emperor Wu wanted to tell them that he knew the answer. Of course, he didn't do that. For some reason, he was quite happy. Concubine Oriole, Empress Dugu, and the Empress Dowager cried out in unison, "He wasn't there." Chapter 2464, Mrs. Jun Wuxia said in frustration, "He wasn't there. Nor was Feng Sun or Shen. It was like the three of them disappeared altogether." "What?" Those words were like a thunderclap in everyone's ears. "His Royal Highness wasn't there?" Empress Dugu's voice was the loudest. She thought she had planned it out so well. After Zhuo Qinghuan married Jun Linyuan and kept him under control, Jun Linshan would have a chance to. "I thought His Royal Highness is very fond of Qinghuan. Was he too busy?" Empress Dugu asked Emperor Wu. Emperor Wu said, "He wasn't. He finished work early, and I let him take his leave." Then, Empress Dugu didn't know what to say. They would still have an excuse if the crown prince was busy with state affairs, but now. "His Royal Highness is very much in love with Qinghuan, isn't he? Maybe it's a misunderstanding." Empress Dugu forced a smile. "Maybe they're having a lover's quarrel. It's not something we should interfere with." The Empress Dowager wasn't very pleased. She preferred Zhuo Qinghuan over Feng Wu, but ever since Zhuo Qinghuan returned to the imperial capital, she had never visited the Empress Dowager to pay her respects. How arrogant. Wandering Temple. Mrs. Tao and Tao Qinging were waiting in a side room. They were the fifth to go in and had to wait a bit longer. The fourth was the wife of Chancellor Chu. The Chu family had recently risen to power after Chancellor Chu took office. Mrs. Chu was here today. She was a regular visitor to the temple and had been among the first 10 worshippers several years in a row. Seeing that Mrs. Tao was getting anxious, she said, "It is indeed taking longer this year. Please don't worry. It'll be our turn soon." Mrs. Tao asked curiously, "Mrs. Chu, do you come here every year?" Mrs. Chu glanced at her own daughter, who was wearing a mask, and nodded with a bitter smile. "Yes. I'm here every year for my daughter. She's unable to live for so many years. I'm here every year to ask for a pill which can keep her alive for another year." The girl had been ill since she was born, and it was common knowledge in her circle, so Mrs. Chu didn't try to keep it from Mrs. Tao. Mrs. Tao gave her a sympathetic look. "I remember that Firmament Palace has some great doctors. Have you tried them?" Mrs. Chu nodded. "We pulled quite a few strings and made contact with the governor of Firmament Palace. They sent a physician, but nothing changed afterward." Mrs. Tao said, "I don't think ordinary physicians will do the trick. Miss Qinghuan is back. She's the sacred lady of the palace and the disciple of the current palace master. It's said that she's a great doctor. Mrs. Chu asked, really? Mrs. Tao said, I was told so. Mrs. Chu said, we were in a hurry to come here today, so we declined the invitation to Miss Qingluan's birthday party. I hope she won't mind. Now that she's with His Royal Highness, she has become even more unapproachable. I'll visit her tomorrow and apologize to her in person. Because of something which had happened before, Mrs. Chu didn't like interacting with the Zhou family. If it wasn't for her daughter, she would never visit them. Mrs. Tao cleared her throat. I wouldn't recommend it. It's a little complicated. Mrs. Chu asked, what's going on? Mrs. Tao told her what happened and Mrs. Chu's eyes widened. Is that so? Chapter 2465. It was Feng Wu. Mrs. Tao said, yes, that's what happened. Zhou Qingluan and Feng Wu's birthdays are on the same day, and they were both born with the true phoenix blood. What a coincidence. The Zhou family wanted to undermine Feng Wu, so they threw this big party and invited everyone important in the imperial capital. In the end, however, the most anticipated guest didn't show up. Is she still trying to undermine Feng Wu? Talk to Mrs. Chu was filled with anger. Mrs. Tao was confused. Is there something wrong? She found Mrs. Chu's reaction strange. Mrs. Chu shook her head at Mrs. Tao. She recalled what she saw 5 years ago while on her way here. But she stopped herself from going down memory lane. She calmed down and said, no, it's nothing. What happened after that? Mrs. Tao then told Mrs. Chu about what happened in the imperial capital, including the matter with the gift envelopes. That was very considerate of His Royal Highness. Mrs. Chu smiled. They're truly the perfect couple. Mrs. Tao found that statement strange. But everyone knows that His Royal Highness and Zhou Qingluan make the perfect couple. Mrs. Chu said, if one has a poor moral character, they're not good for anything, no matter how precious their bloodline is or what an advanced cultivator they are. Mrs. Tao asked, Mrs. Chu, are you saying that Zhou Qingluan has a poor moral character? The Chu family was newly risen to power, but the Zhou family had a long history and was well connected. Despite not liking the family, Mrs. Chu wouldn't offend such a colossus. Before Mrs. Chu could respond, Tao Qingqing snorted and said, that's what Zhou Qingluan is like. If you ask me, I think all the talk about His Royal Highness being madly in love with her are rumors she created herself. Watch your mouth. Mrs. Tao shot a warning glance at Tao Qingqing. Tao Qingqing took a few steps away. I'm telling the truth. She suddenly stopped and stared at someone in the distance. What's wrong? Mrs. Tao asked. Tao Qingqing waved at her. Come over here. Hurry. Mrs. Tao walked up to her. Mom, look. Tao Qingqing pointed at someone ahead of them. Doesn't that look like Feng Wu? It was snowing and they couldn't see very clearly. By the time Mrs. Tao went to her daughter's side, that person had moved even further away from them, so she couldn't make out who it was. Feng Wu? Why would she be here? You're imagining things. Mrs. Tao rubbed Tao Qingqing's head and thought that her daughter had been obsessed with Feng Wu lately. It really was her. I saw her coming out of the bamboo grove. That was where Master Ling Hu lived. Mrs. Tao jabbed Tao Qingqing's forehead with a finger. Why does everyone look like Feng Wu to you? Remember, we're still on Zhou Qingluan's side. Tao Qingqing was frustrated. Just then, the abbot announced that the first worshipper had left, and the rest could enter the main hall in turn. They would each be given an object that had been blessed by Master Ling Hu. As a matter of fact, Tao Qingqing was right. The person she had seen was indeed Feng Wu. Feng Wu suspected that the old monk had some connection to her beautiful master, so she asked him some questions. Chapter 2466. I won't admit it. However, Master Ling Hu wouldn't answer any of her questions, which Feng Wu found very annoying. Before she left, Master Ling Hu said, Do you still have the jade pendant? If you run into any problems with officials that you can't solve, show them the pendant. It may help you. Feng Wu said, that won't be necessary. Master Ling Hu smiled mysteriously, as if he could see through everything. No, you'll need it. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Phoenix Yard at the Zhou family. The furniture and decor had been replaced. If one didn't know better, they wouldn't know that the place had been smashed up yet again. This time, Zhou Qingwan didn't try to keep it a secret. Her parents also knew that she was furious. But they were having a row in their own courtyard and didn't have time to talk to Zhou Qingwan yet. The maids were so frightened that they didn't dare make a sound. They couldn't understand how a sacred lady could be so ferocious. Tong Kai dismissed them all. The maids couldn't move fast enough, fearing that Miss Zhou would vent her rage on them. After the door was closed, Tong Kai walked into the bedroom with a stack of files. The room was lit up by the moonlight shining in through the window. Half of Zhou Qingwan's face was lit up, and the other half was in the dark. It was quite a disturbing image. But Tong Kai wasn't scared. She whispered something in Zhou Qingwan's ear. What? Zhou Qingwan almost jumped to her feet. Are you sure? She grabbed Tongshua's arm. She was so agitated that she broke Tongshua's arm with sheer force. Sweat broke out on Tongshua's face at the pain, but she nodded and said calmly, My lady, His Royal Highness did indeed go to Feng Wu's Fallen Star Yard. The news came from Firmament Pavilion. Zhou Qingwan found the people of the Zhou family incompetent, so she relied on Firmament Pavilion to collect information. Tong Kai handed her a letter. Our people saw it with their own eyes. Zhou Qingwan's eyes turned red as she read the letter. Feng Wu. Jun Linyuan had gone to Fallen Star Yard. Tong Kai studied Zhou Qingwan. Before they left, the head of the palace had told her that the sacred lady was indeed a genius, and if she put her mind to her cultivation, she would have such a promising future. Tong Kai wanted to tell Zhou Qingwan to open her eyes and admit that the crown prince was in love with Feng Wu. And how did Firmament Pavilion get that information? Feng Wu was the one who spread the news. She wanted Zhou Qingwan to know that Jun Linyuan had been in Fallen Star Yard. She needed Zhou Qingwan to admit that Jun Linyuan was fond of Feng Wu. She was a little ashamed of what she did, but she told herself that she had to do it for the 11th trial. Feng Wu walked back and forth in her room and waited for the fairy to tell her that she had completed the task. No, it's not happening. Zhou Qingwan clenched her fists. Unless I'm dead, I'll never admit that he's fond of her. Zhou Qingwan glared at Tong Kai. Her eyes were so red that she looked like a mad person. Chapter 2467. Immortal Spiritual Fruit. I'll regret it so much. Zhou Qingwan bit her lower lip and closed her eyes. Why did I listen to my master and go traveling for a year? I shouldn't have given Feng Wu that extra time. Otherwise, His Royal Highness would never have fallen for Feng Wu. However, Zhou Qingwan managed to fight back her rage. She gradually calmed down. That quality made her a most formidable enemy for Feng Wu. Tong Kai said, Miss Qingwan, I discovered something about Feng Wu. I wonder if it'll be of interest to you. Zhou Qingwan stared at her. Tong Kai tensed up and said, I think Feng Wu is too pretty, and her good looks can easily affect any man, so I looked into her past in Northern Border City and found something. Before, Zhou Qingwan wouldn't even bother to know anything about Feng Wu, let alone what she did in Northern Border City. But now, after all the humiliation she had received from Feng Wu, she knew that she couldn't keep ignoring the girl anymore. Therefore, Tongshua's information came just in time. Tell me more, said Zhou Qingwan. With a wave of her hand, Tong Kai summoned a man to the room. He knelt down in front of Zhou Qingwan. Tong Kai said, Shadow 3 just came back from the northern border with some information. Zhou Qingwan stared at the man. Shadow 3 looked as if he was going to melt into the darkness. He was a formidable assassin. Miss Qingwan. Just like his figure, his voice also lacked any distinctive characteristics. He took out a letter and handed it to Zhou Qingwan. Zhou Qingwan quickly read it. Her eyes widened. How was that possible? She read the letter again. This time, she made sure that she didn't miss a word. Feng Wu would jump to her feet if she saw the letter because it was talking about the incident with the immortal spiritual fruit. About a year ago, Jun Linyuan and his friends went to northern border city to search for the immortal spiritual fruit, which could keep Bao Er alive. However, disguised as an ugly girl, Feng Wu had snatched that fruit from them. I don't believe it. Zhuo Qingwan had never been so excited. Get Mu Yao Yao for me. Despite her great satisfaction, Zhuo Qingwan remained level-headed. She needed Mu Yao Yao to tell her exactly what happened so that she could get things right and destroy Feng Wu once and for all. Mu Yao Yao soon arrived. Zhuo Qingwan asked her about what happened in northern border city, and Mu Yao Yao told her everything. That ugly girl was as annoying as Feng Wu. Mu Yao Yao clenched her fists in frustration. Zhuo Qingwan asked, "Do you think the two of them are similar somehow?" Wait. Mu Yao Yao slapped her own lap. Now that you've mentioned it, they do resemble each other. They're both so cunning. Does Feng Wu have a sister? Mu Yao Yao was confused. Chapter 2468, Feng Wu and Her Masks. Sister? Zhuo Qingwan smirked. It was Feng Wu herself. Back then, when Zhuo Qingwan considered Feng Wu to be a worthy enemy, she had learned everything about that girl. Feng Wu could disguise herself as someone else. And she was an expert at it. After hearing what Mu Yao Yao said, Zhuo Qingwan reached a conclusion. Feng Wu was the thief who had stolen the immortal spiritual fruit from His Royal Highness. Zhuo Qingwan had never expected to discover something so useful. Miss Qingwan, that information. Zhuo Qingwan smirked. She humiliated me. I wouldn't be me if I don't get revenge. Tong Kai looked forward to seeing what happened next. Let's go. Zhuo Qingwan rose to her feet. Tong Kai followed her in a hurry. She wondered where they were going. But she didn't ask. Zhuo Qingwan headed for the Feng clan. Meanwhile, in the Feng clan, when Feng Wu turned around, she saw the two elders shouting at Feng Yanfeng. One was saying that he was going to destroy his cultivation ability, and the other one wanted to remove him from his position as the head of the clan. Feng Yanfeng was scared out of his wits. He begged Feng Wu to spare his life, and promised that he would do everything in his power to repay her. Of course he would be frightened. The two elders, Jun Linyuan and Emperor Wu, were all on Feng Wu's side. No one would be able to handle such pressure. Feng Wu said, "Let's give him another chance. If he does anything to betray my trust again, we can cut him into little pieces." Feng Yanfeng said, "I won't." As soon as he opened his mouth, Feng Wu threw a pink pill into his mouth. By the time Feng Yanfeng realized it, he had swallowed the pill. He had no idea what it was, but it melted in his mouth immediately, and there was no way to spit it out. Feng Wu crouched down and grinned at Feng Yanfeng, who had dropped to the ground. "No, you don't like me. I don't like you either. Your promise means nothing to me. I only trust my own medicine. That's a very effective pill. If you try anything funny again, no one will be able to save you." She then rose to her feet and said to the two elders, "He can be useful at times, so just let him keep his position a little longer. What do you think?" Elder Jing and Elder Grain exchanged reluctant looks. They wanted a new clan head, but they couldn't find anyone suitable for the position. Feng Yanfeng could keep his position, but from then on, he wouldn't dare offend Feng Wu again. Lady Wang greeted him when he went back to his courtyard. "My lord, did they arrest Feng Wu?" Feng Iran and Feng Sang were waiting for his answer as well. Feng Yanfeng looked like he had lost the ability to think. "My lord, did Feng Wu sign that agreement? We need to show it to Elder Grain." Feng Yanfeng couldn't take it anymore. He slapped his wife. He used so much force that she spun like a spinning top. Chapter 2469. Since when is His Majesty on Feng Wu's side? Lady Wang was dumbfounded. She had never thought that Feng Yanfeng would hit her. "My lord! Dad! Father!" Lady Wang, Feng Sang and Feng Yuan cried out at the same time. Feng Yanfeng's eyes were bloodshot. How terrifying! He looked from Feng Sang to Feng Yiren. He then stared at Lady Wang. He pointed at Lady Wang and shouted in a shaky voice, "You vile woman! How many times have I told you not to mess with Feng Wu? You just won't listen. And you keep urging me on. You almost got me killed today. What did you say? Is Feng Wu dead? She's going to be around long after you're dead." Feng Yanfeng was furious. He had knelt in front of the two elders and begged them to spare his life. And Feng Wu had forced him to swallow that pill. If he did anything wrong, she could kill him in an instant. Lady Wang burst into tears. "Lu, you died for nothing. Your father won't avenge you." "That's right. She died for nothing," Feng Yanfeng said decisively. When his life was threatened, he knew what he would choose. "If anyone brings up this subject again, I'll throw them out of this house." Feng Yanfeng took a deep breath and stared at Lady Wang. "And you?" Two elders are backing Feng Wu now. Who are they, you may ask? Elder Jing and Elder Grain. Feng Yanfeng gritted his teeth. Lady Wang didn't know Elder Jing well, but Elder Grain. "I thought Elder Grain was on our side. Plus, they've never interacted with Feng Wu before." "How? My lord, is there a misunderstanding?" Lady Wang still wouldn't believe it. Feng Yanfeng was reminded of what happened in Fallen Star Yard, and he shouted at Lady Wang. "There's no misunderstanding. Those two elders supposedly never leave the restricted area, but they were there to celebrate Feng Wu's birthday tonight." "What?" Lady Wang couldn't believe her ears. How could that be? Since when was Feng Wu so familiar with the two elders? Those two men were the most authoritative figures in the clan. I thought that having the support of the two elders was very impressive, but when I got to Fallen Star Yard, I found both His Royal Highness and His Majesty there. Feng Yanfeng had lost all hope at that moment. He could understand His Royal Highness being there because the young prince had always favored Feng Wu, but Emperor Wu. The idea of the emperor hanging around a remote corner of the Feng clan's manor was simply unrealistic. What was going on? Hearing what Feng Yanfeng said, Lady Wang couldn't stop trembling. Seriously? This couldn't be happening. How? When did His Majesty become Feng Wu's patron? Lady Wang was baffled. "Told and have survived this night," said Feng Yanfeng. Hearing that, Lady Wang turned ghastly pale. Chapter 2470. He's a fickle man. "Team only standing here now because Feng Wu appealed to His Majesty for mercy on my behalf. I got to keep my life and my position as the head of the clan, but I've lost my official job." Feng Yanfeng sounded crestfallen. Lady Wang didn't know what to say. Feng Yanfeng waved his hand weakly. "Just remember not to offend Feng Wu ever again." He fainted after that and had a high fever. Feng Wu didn't know what happened in Feng Yanfeng's family, nor did she care. Someone stopped her on her way back to Fallen Star Yard. A figure appeared on top of the pavilion. In the silver moonlight, she looked like a fairy that was going to fly away in the wind. Zhuo Qingwan looked down at Feng Wu. It was the first time she had studied Feng Wu so carefully after 5 years. Although she hated to admit it, Zhuo Qingwan acknowledged the fact that Feng Wu was a very beautiful girl and would only be even more beautiful in the future. How unpleasant. Zhuo Qingwan stared at Feng Wu. Even after everything that had happened, Zhuo Qingwan was still arrogant. She believed that Feng Wu wasn't her equal. To her, Feng Wu was just an ant. Tension seemed to gather in the air, and a fight could start at any moment. Zhuo Qingwan spoke first. She sighed and glanced at Feng Wu. "I never thought that a pretty face would be so useful. I've underestimated your good looks." Feng Wu smiled calmly. "So, you've concluded that His Royal Highness came to my birthday celebration instead of going to yours because I'm prettier than you?" Zhuo Qingwan frowned. "Am I wrong?" Feng Wu didn't answer but asked a question. "Do you regret it? For not destroying her face 5 years ago?" Zhuo Qingwan gave it some thought and nodded. "I do." Feng Wu smiled a little. "It's not too late to do it now." Zhuo Qingwan shook her head. "No, it's too late." Feng Wu asked why. Zhuo Qingwan said, "He likes your face, so I can't do anything to you before he gets tired of it. Otherwise, he'll be angry. I can never make him upset." Feng Wu said, "So?" Zhuo Qingwan said, "So after he grows tired of you, you'll lose your good looks. He's a fickle man, you know." Feng Wu shook her head. "You can't be any more wrong. His emotions run deep." Zhuo Qingwan smirked and ignored her comment. No one would have expected that the two archenemies could have a normal conversation. After a pause of 5 minutes, Zhuo Qingwan spoke again. "You have 3 days?" Feng Wu asked, "What?" Zhuo Qingwan said, "After 3 days, you and the other members of Fallen Star Yard should return to Northern Border City and never come back. Do that, and I'll spare your life." Feng Wu said, "What if I won't leave?" Zhuo Qingwan said, "Then you'll regret your decision." Feng Wu didn't like Zhuo Qingwan's condescending tone and made a mental note that one day, she would break that mask she wore. She said, "You wouldn't threaten me for nothing. Just tell me. What do you think you have on me?" Chapter 2471. News on Your Beautiful Master. Zhuo Qingwan narrowed her eyes. Feng Wu knew her as well as she knew Feng Wu. That was generally what archenemies were like. Northern Border City, the ugly girl, and the immortal spiritual fruit, Zhuo Qingwan said as she looked into Feng Wu's eyes. "If you're still here 3 days later, he'll know what you did." Feng Wu's stomach lurched. The thing she feared the most had finally happened. She gritted her teeth. "Right? You probably don't know who Bao Er is?" Zhuo Qingwan smiled. "She's the only child of the late princess, who was the crown prince's aunt and his majesty's sister." "Do you know how the princess died?" Zhuo Qingwan gave Feng Wu a meaningful smile before she left. Fallen Star Yard. Seeing how frustrated Feng Wu was, Chaoga was surprised. "Didn't you go to Wandering Temple as the first worshipper of the year? Why do you look so upset? Did that old swindler trick you again?" Feng Wu shook her head. She then asked Chaoga, "Do you know who Bao Er? Chaoga said, "I've heard of her before. She's the only child of the late princess, and the royal family is very protective of her. I've never met her, so I don't know much about her, but I'm sure Feng Sun knows something. He's so nosy." Feng Sun. Feng Wu recalled what the ugly girls had done to Feng Sun back in Northern Border City and wondered how he would react if he discovered who that girl really was. Just then, she heard a ding in her head. Feng Wu jolted. Had she finished the 11th trial? However, when she checked the message, she was disappointed to realize that wasn't the case. The fairy was looking at her with an obsequious smile. "You've triggered a hidden mission. What do you think?" Feng Wu frowned. "A hidden mission? How did that happen? Tell me about it." The fairy said, "You need to make Bao Er like you." Feng Wu asked, "What if I say no?" The fairy said, "You can do that, but would you like to hear about the reward?" Feng Wu said, "No, but I know you'll tell me no matter what." The fairy nodded. Feng Wu said, "Fine. Go ahead." The fairy said, "After you finish the 12 trials and get the broken star piece, Master Mu Jiuzhou will wake up. However, there's a time limit to that." Feng Wu nodded. The fairy said, "The more Bao Er likes you, the longer your master will stay awake." Feng Wu was astonished. The fairy nodded. "Yes. It's a very generous reward." Feng Wu frowned. "How can the 12 trials of love affect the time that my master will stay awake? Who designed these trials?" The fairy shrugged and shook her head. "Will you accept the challenge?" "Yes, of course." Feng Wu grew excited. "How will you evaluate how much Bao Er likes me?" The fairy said, "It's on a scale from 1 to 100, and 100 is the highest score. So, if I get full marks, will my beautiful master stay awake for 100 days after I get the second broken star piece?" Chapter 2472. The Truth. The last time her beautiful master came back, he only stayed for 7 days before he fell back into his long sleep again. And Feng Wu only managed to learn 3 moves of the Fallen Star swordplay. The fairy nodded. "Yes." Feng Wu immediately headed out. Chaoga was speechless. Feng Wu had looked so defeated a moment ago, but now, she was in high spirits once again. Where are you going? Chaoga asked. Where's Bao Er? Feng Wu asked. That was a good question. Where on earth was Bao Er? I'm sure Feng Sun knows the answer. Chaoga said loudly. Meanwhile, in Phoenix Yard. Miss Qingluan, do you think Feng Wu will pack up and leave? Tong Kai wasn't so sure. Zhou Qingluan pondered for a while. Before, she had never considered Feng Wu a threat. But now, she had to figure out what Feng Wu would do, which annoyed her greatly. When she put her mind to something, she could be very intimidating. What do you think she'll do? Zhou Qingluan frowned. Tong Kai said, Miss Qingluan, do you want my honest answer? Zhou Qingluan said, speak. Tong Kai bit her lip and said, first of all, it's a fact that Feng Wu has won His Royal Highness's heart. Zhou Qingluan's face turned livid. Those words were like daggers stabbing into her chest. Tong Kai stole a glance at Zhou Qingluan. Seeing that her young master could still control her temper, she went on, I saw it at Beyond World Tower the other day. Feng Wu is quite shameless and doesn't think twice about fawning on His Royal Highness. Pardon me for saying this, but men like girls like that. Zhou Qingluan was so frustrated. Tong Kai said, Miss Qingluan, you're such a proud young lady. I'm sure if you can change your attitude a little. Zhou Qingluan glared at Tong Kai. Tong Kai felt like a needle had just pierced her head. Fine, no honest answer. Tong Kai sighed inwardly because she genuinely felt that girls like that were more approachable. Even she began to feel that. Of course, she was still on Miss Qingluan's side. Tong Kai clenched her fists. Tong Kai then said, since she's so shameless, I think she'll definitely stay. I even think that she'll do everything she can to keep His Royal Highness happy. Having seen what Feng Wu would do to please the Crown Prince, Tong Kai knew that she could easily defeat Zhou Qingluan when it came to winning a man's heart. Zhou Qingluan would still have a chance if she was prettier than Feng Wu, but Tong Kai was suddenly filled with despair. Hearing what Tong Kai said, Zhou Qingluan was frustrated. She rose to her feet. Miss Qingluan, where are you going? Asked Tong Kai. I'm going to see Feng Sun. Meanwhile, in Fallen Star Yard. Xiao Wu, where are you going? Chaoga had been chatting with Feng Wu, when the latter suddenly got to her feet. Tim going to see Feng Sun. Northern Feng Mansion. Achoo! Feng Sun rubbed his nose and had an ominous feeling. Both Feng Wu and Zhou Qingluan were headed for Northern Feng Mansion, but who would get there first? Chapter 2473, His Majesty wrote it. Feng Wu arrived first. Feng Sun was in his own courtyard. Feng Sun pretended that he was asleep when he heard Feng Wu call his name. He thought that the girl was here to ask about Yuminji. Boss Jun had been very angry about Yuminji's fireworks and had told Feng Sun to look into it. That was what Feng Sun had been doing since he left the Feng family. Yuminji hadn't come in person. He was still learning from the Black Dragon King and had sent someone here to set off the fireworks to stake his claim on Feng Wu. The entire imperial capital had seen it, and the crown prince was very displeased. Feng Sun cringed when he imagined the price Yuminji was going to pay for what he did. Feng Wu called his name again, but Feng Sun hid under his blanket and acted as if he couldn't hear her. But Feng Wu pulled the blanket away as soon as she entered his room. Feng Sun yelled, Hey! How can you be so rude? I'm going to tell my beautiful aunt what you did. He knew how the beautiful lady had been trying to turn Feng Wu into a proper lady. Feng Wu crossed her arms and asked grumpily, What's going on with Bao Er? Is that what you're here for? To ask about Bao Er? Feng Sun was relieved. Feng Wu raised her eyebrows. But, do you have something else to tell me? Feng Sun shook his head. Of course not. You have a higher clearance level than I do. What more can I tell you? Right, Bao Er? He immediately changed the topic. Why do you want to know? He asked curiously. Feng Wu said, Someone told me that she's the person His Royal Highness cares about the most. That's why I'm curious. Jealous, are we? Feng Sun teased her. Feng Wu rolled her eyes at him. Jealousy implies that I care about him, but I don't, so there's no jealousy involved. Feng Sun wanted to roll his eyes at her. He said, "It's been a year since Northern Border City. How long are you going to keep denying it?" Feng Wu stomped on his foot. "Shut up." Feng Sun sucked in his breath in pain. "I'm telling the truth. The two of you. Fine. You can keep saying that you don't care about Boss Jun, but I'm sure that Boss Jun cares about you." Feng Wu said awkwardly, "No, he doesn't." Feng Sun said, "Shao Wu, be reasonable." Feng Wu turned around. "If you don't want to tell me about Bao Air, I'm leaving now." Seeing that Feng Wu still refused to face reality, Feng Sun couldn't stand it anymore. He grabbed Feng Wu's arm and said, "I don't care if you don't want to listen to me. You can't keep running away from it. Can't you see that Boss Jun has been quite aggressive lately?" Feng Wu said, "No, he hasn't." Feng Sun said, "Do you remember the words formed by the fireworks about you and him?" Feng Wu blurted out, "His Majesty wrote that." Feng Sun laughed. "And you believe that?" Feng Wu said, "Why shouldn't I? It was his." Feng Sun said, "Fine. Keep denying it, then. Boss Jun will force you to face it one day. It's been a year, and his patience is running out." 2. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. She didn't feel like hanging around here anymore. Chapter 2474, Drive a Wedge Between. Feng Wu wanted to slip away. "Speaking of Bao Air, I do recall something. It's about the immortal spiritual fruit in Northern Border City." Feng Sun wanted to discuss it with Feng Wu, but she took off as soon as he started talking. But she paused after a few steps. She couldn't run away like this. Zhuo Qingwan had somehow found out about the immortal spiritual fruit and was bound to tell Feng Sun. At that thought, she turned around to face Feng Sun. "You lost a bet to me. Do you remember?" she asked seriously. Feng Sun lost the bet when he said that no member of the Feng clan would celebrate Feng Wu's birthday for her. Of course Feng Sun still remembered it. He crossed his arms and stared at Feng Wu. "What do you want from me?" Feng Wu asked, "How have I treated you all this time?" Feng Sun said, "Okay, I guess." Feng Wu asked, "Okay? I've been so nice to you. Anyway, I tricked you once before, and I'll let you out of the bet that you lost. After that, we're even. Deal?" Feng Sun was dumbfounded. "Wait, you tricked me?" Feng Wu thought, "You'll soon find out." She said, "Anyway, we're even, right?" Feng Sun scratched his head. Somehow, he felt that he had been tricked again. Feng Wu glared at him. "Right? Answer me." Feng Sun said, "If you say so." Feng Wu said, "Then it's a deal." Feng Sun was still baffled when Feng Wu shook hands with him. "Hey, you haven't told me how you've tricked me yet?" Feng Wu ran off before Feng Sun could catch her. Feng Sun was rendered speechless. Moonlight poured into the courtyard. Feng Sun scratched his head and searched his memory. He couldn't remember how the girl had tricked him. How annoying. Young Lord Feng. He was still lost in thought when a visitor arrived. The silver moonlight gave the girl an otherworldly beauty. Zhuo Qingwan. Feng Sun was suddenly alarmed. 5 years ago, he used to see Zhuo Qingwan as a friend, but now that they had met again, he felt that she was more like an enemy. How strange. He didn't think that there was any conflict between them. "What do you think of Feng Wu?" Zhuo Qingwan cut to the chase. Feng Sun asked, "What do you mean?" "Of course, she's my dear sister." Zhuo Qingwan said, "Your dear sister? Feng Sun, do you know what she thinks of you?" Feng Sun frowned. "Are you trying to drive a wedge between us?" Zhuo Qingwan said, "Read this, then tell me if I'm trying to drive you away from her." That was all she was going to say. She showed Feng Sun what she had discovered. Chapter 2475, Tell me who she is. Feng Sun asked, "What's that?" He didn't open the envelope right away. Zhuo Qingwan said, "It's the evidence that'll show you His Royal Highness and Xian Yi who Feng Wu really is. She tricked all of you. Just read it." Feng Sun smirked and pushed the envelope back to Zhuo Qingwan. Aren't you going to open it? Zhuo Qingwan asked coldly. Why should I look at something that's obviously a lie? Asked Feng Sun. How do you know it's a lie? Feng Sun said, You said Xiao Wu tricked us. That's obviously a lie. Zhuo Qingwan smirked. Feng Sun, I can't believe how dumb you've become. You're defending her now, but do you know what she did? She's been using you from the very beginning. Impossible. Then read it. You'll see, Zhuo Qingwan prompted. Feng Sun shook his head. No, I won't. Zhuo Qingwan was furious. She couldn't understand why Feng Sun wouldn't believe her. But she knew what to do. Zhuo Qingwan said, Northern Border City, Frozen Forest, the ugly girl. Feng Sun gritted his teeth. Do you know her? Who is she? Because of that girl, Feng Sun felt that he owed Boss June. Just tell me who that ugly girl is. Feng Sun bellowed furiously. You was so nice to her. Boss June said we should leave her in the forest, but I wouldn't. I promised them that she wouldn't cause any trouble. And what did she do? She stole the immortal spiritual fruit. We were going to save Bao Er's life with it. We had such a hard time trying to catch her. Even Boss June joined in, but guess what? She escaped. Why was she so hard to catch? Even Boss June couldn't catch her. The smile on Zhuo Qingwan's face grew wider as Feng Sun continued grousing. It was hard to imagine that the sacred lady could smile so brightly. Stop smiling. Tell me who she is. I'm gonna kill her when I find her. Feng Sun had forgotten all about what Feng Wu said about them being even. All he could think about was finding the ugly girl and kicking her ass. He'll take her to Boss June and make her pay for what she did. Feng Sun bellowed. That girl was the only person who had ever defeated Boss June. Who is she? Zhuo Qingwan gave him a meaningful smile. Boom. Feng Sun felt like he had been struck by lightning. He stared at Zhuo Qingwan. Zhuo Qingwan smiled coldly. Feng Sun said, Do you mean? Zhuo Qingwan looked at the thick envelope. Chapter 2476, That Painting. No, it can't have been Xiao Wu. They don't even look alike. Feng Sun shook his head. But he gradually calmed down. Feng Xiaowu and Feng Wu. They were practically the same name. No, it must be a coincidence. People can have similar names. However, his intuition told him differently because he realized that both girls were equally witty and unpredictable. No, they don't even have the same body type. Zhuo Qingwan said, if she can change the way she looks, why can't she change everything else? Feng Sun was rendered speechless. He wouldn't believe it. That couldn't be the truth. What's written inside can confirm your speculation. You can look for evidence yourself as well. Finally, Feng Sun picked up the envelope and read the information. Afterward, Zhuo Qingwan smiled in satisfaction. She believed that she had defeated Feng Wu. Meanwhile, Feng Wu didn't return to Fallen Star Yard, but went to the Crown Prince's residence instead. It was the last place she wanted to go. If she had a choice, she would avoid Jun Linyuan, but for her beautiful master, she had to talk to him. Bao Er had been protected too well. Other than knowing who her mother was, she couldn't find any other information about her. Therefore, she had to go and see the Crown Prince. Luckily, she had a lot of time to finish this task. The deadline was the same as for the 12th trial. But where her beautiful master was concerned, Feng Wu wouldn't delay even a minute. The Crown Prince's residence. Granny Gong was pleasantly surprised to see Feng Wu. Miss Wu, are you here to see His Royal Highness? Please follow me, Granny Gong said loudly, as if she wanted to tell everyone that Feng Wu was here. Hearing her voice, many rooms immediately lit up. Feng Wu said, Ahem. I'm not here to see His Royal Highness. Granny Gong, I'm here to see you. Granny Gong was perplexed. Me? Feng Wu nodded. Yes. I want to ask you something. Granny Gong glanced at the Crown Prince's courtyard. The light had gone off, but when she announced Feng Wu's arrival, the window lit up again. She knew that if she didn't take Feng Wu there, her master wouldn't lose his temper immediately, but all the servants would have a hard time later. Granny Gong knew what to do. She immediately figured out how to solve the problem. Miss Wu, of course, I'll answer all your questions, but I still have some errands to run. How about I show you to His Royal Highness's study? His Royal Highness doesn't trust anyone but me with his books. Don't worry. His Royal Highness is cultivating at the moment. He's not there. Granny Gong smiled. Why did she make the suggestion? Because she knew that her master had drawn a portrait of Feng Wu that very afternoon. Chapter 2477 How Vile. Granny Gong had seen the painting and thought, there's no use painting it if you're not going to let her see it. But His Royal Highness would never willingly show it to Feng Wu. He threw it away right after he finished it. Granny Gong knew where the painting was. It was crumpled up behind a vase, and she had made sure that it was still there. She was going to lead Feng Wu there when she visited and let her discover it. It was a very subtle plan. Knowing nothing about this plan, Feng Wu went to the study with Granny Gong. Granny Gong chatted with Feng Wu as she cleaned the room. Miss Wu, what do you want to ask me? Granny Gong didn't move as quickly as usual. They wouldn't have any excuse to stay here if she cleaned up the room too fast. Preoccupied with her beautiful master and Bao Er, Feng Wu didn't notice anything unusual. Moreover, it would never occur to her that Granny Gong would try to help Jun Linyuan this way. Feng Wu began to ask about Bao Er. Bao Er? Granny Gong slowly put away the books and began to wipe everything clean with a piece of cloth. Yes. Could you tell me more about her? Feng Wu joined in, helping Granny Gong to clean the room. She couldn't bring herself to watch Granny Gong do everything on her own. Granny Gong liked Feng Wu even more. But she still remembered the question. May I ask why you want to know about Bao Er? Feng Wu said, someone told me that Bao Er is the person His Royal Highness cares about the most. Granny Gong was infuriated. What a vile suggestion. She and Feng had been doing all they could to get things going between His Royal Highness and Feng Wu, but someone was trying to sabotage this relationship. Before I answer your question, may I ask who told you that? Granny Gong never forgave her enemies. Feng Wu had no reason to cover for Zhuo Qingluan, so she said, it was Zhuo Qingluan. I knew it. Granny Gong took a deep breath, took out a notebook and started writing. Feng Wu was intrigued. Granny Gong, what's that? She then saw the title on the front page, My Enemies. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Granny Gong said, I'm getting old, and my memory isn't as good as before, so whenever I have an enemy, I write down their name in this notebook. After I take my revenge, I'll cross out that name. Convenient, isn't it? This way, I'll never leave anyone out. It's been a while since anyone has dared to offend me, however, so I haven't been writing down any names. Titi sounded like she missed the old days. Feng Wu felt that she had discovered a new side to Granny Gong. Ahem. Granny Gong put away the notebook and cleared her throat. Right, Bao Er? Miss Wu, you'll see why I don't like Miss Sua. She was trying to mislead you and make you jealous when she said that Bao Er was the person His Royal Highness cares about the most. Luckily, you're the cleverest girl. I'll tell you all about it. Bao Er is only 5 years old, and her mother was the late sister of His Majesty. After she passed away, the girl was put under His Royal Highness's care. And that's what Qingluan was trying to make you feel jealous of a 5-year-old girl. That's just despicable. Chapter 2478 About Bao Er. Feng Wu cleared her throat. Granny Gong was so bold. Granny Gong, she's the daughter of the Zhuo family and the Sacred Lady of Firmament Palace. Aren't you afraid of her? Why should I be? It's not like she's going to marry His Royal Highness. Granny Gong said grumpily. Miss Wu, don't worry. You're the only one His Royal Highness is fond of. Abashed, Feng Wu stomped her foot. Granny Gong, what are you talking about? She was here to talk about Bao Er. Granny Gong glanced at Feng Wu. The girl was blushing, and she looked like a blossoming flower in the morning sunlight. In all the years she had served at court, Granny Gong had seen a lot of beautiful women, but none of them could compare with Feng Wu. She knew that she had said enough about Jun Linyuan's feelings. Revealing too much would only ruin the moment. Hence, she changed the subject to Bao Er. Princess Bao Er is right here in this manner. Feng Wu's eyes widened. Really? I've never heard anyone mention it. Granny Gong sighed. Princess Bao Er has been in poor health since she was born. We've used all the rare and precious medicines on her, and they're the only reason she has survived, but a year ago, I heard young Lord Feng talk about an immortal spiritual fruit which can only be found once every 1,000 years. If they could find it, maybe Princess Bao Er could be cured. Therefore, His Royal Highness went to Northern Border City in person. But His Royal Highness came back without the fruit. That was probably the first time he had failed a task. His Royal Highness then shut himself in his room for a long time. Princess Bao Er wasn't doing well, and her health was slipping. In the end, His Royal Highness went to see Master Ling Hu at Wandering Temple. Master Ling Hu hardly ever leaves his temple, but because he and His Royal Highness are good friends, he came here and sealed Princess Bao Er with spiritual essence. Sealed? Feng Wu grew a little pale. The immortal spiritual fruit that had enabled her to cultivate again was also the medicine that could save Bao Er. Jun Linyuan found the fruit, but she stole it from him. If someone tried to steal a medicine that could save her beautiful master, she would probably kill that person. At that thought, she panicked a little. Granny Gong didn't know what was going on in her mind. She sighed and went on, if he hadn't done that, Princess Bao Er might have died. After that procedure, however, she's been lying in a coma ever since. You can't even tell that she's still alive. Feng Wu said, you mean she's in a vegetative state? Granny Gong said, yes. She's been like that for almost a year, and things are getting worse. Feng Wu asked, did Master Ling Hu leave any instructions? Although he had tricked her a few times, he was still a capable cultivator. Granny Gong said, yes. Feng Wu asked, what did he say? Granny Gong said, Master Ling Hu said that his treatment would only give Princess Bao Er 1 more year. That time is almost up. Feng Wu clenched her fists. That was why she hadn't heard any news about Bao Er in the past year. Chapter 2479 Jun Linyuan's painting. As it turned out, Bao Er had been in a coma this whole time. Given what Jun Linyuan was like, he definitely wouldn't want other people to talk about her. That was why Feng Wu hadn't heard any news about Bao Er. If Zhuo Qingluan hadn't brought it up. Can't anyone help Bao Er? What about the best physician in the empire? Feng Wu asked. Granny Gong said, Master Ling Hu is the best physician in the empire. Feng Wu looked perplexed. Granny Gong said, Firmament Palace is good at training physicians, and the old master has helped Bao Er before. She said she would figure something out, but so far she hasn't sent us anything. I don't think she knows what to do either. Given the chance, everyone would want to do Jun Linyuan a favor. Feng Wu clenched her fists. Can I see Bao Er? Granny Gong shook her head. No one is allowed to see her without His Royal Highness's permission. She then added, the late princess's death is related to His Royal Highness. Feng Wu looked perplexed. That was why Jun Linyuan cared about Bao Er so much. She wondered what happened back then. Granny Gong didn't want to bother Feng Wu with Bao Er's matter, because she was concerned about something else. The old master of Firmament Palace was Zhuo Qingluan's teacher. If Zhuo Qingluan came to see Bao Er, using her master as an excuse, she might even move into the Crown Prince's residence. If that happened, that would be a lot of trouble. The Crown Prince and Feng Wu hadn't acknowledged their relationship yet. Whenever the Crown Prince made a move, Feng Wu would run away. They couldn't afford any intruders. Granny Gong grew anxious. Wait, why did His Royal Highness throw this here? Granny Gong picked up a piece of crumpled paper from behind a vase. She smoothed it out on the desk. It's a painting. Can it be Bao Er? Granny Gong knew that if she suggested that it was a portrait of Feng Wu, the girl would run away immediately. So, she used Bao Er as an excuse. Bao Er. Feng Wu was intrigued. She moved closer, only to see herself in the painting. It really was her. In the painting, she wore a red dress. Her skin was flawless, and there was a proud look on her face. Feng recognized it right away. It was one of Jun Linyuan's paintings. No one could copy that style. Miss Wu, it's you. It's so pretty. Granny Gong chuckled. Everyone says that anything created by His Royal Highness is worth a small fortune. This painting alone is more valuable than the street outside. Look, there are some written words as well. Granny Gong pointed to the left of the painting. The sovereign descends to the world. The phoenix soars above the land. How nice. Granny Gong was amazed. Not those words again. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Granny Gong said, only His Royal Highness can come up with such a wonderful expression. On the other side of the wall, Jun Linyuan smiled when he heard this. He was very pleased with himself as well. Feng Wu said, what's so great about that? Chapter 2480 Terminally Ill. Granny Gong was perplexed. What? Feng Wu said, plus, His Majesty came up with those words, not His Royal Highness. Granny Gong said, no, I watched His Royal Highness write these words. That was before His Majesty arrived. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Granny Gong said, Miss Wu, His Royal Highness is. Feng Wu said, I need to see him right now. To be more precise, I need to see Bao Er. Granny Gong said, His Royal Highness is cultivating in the training room. Feng Wu said, then I'll go to the training room. That was indeed where she found Jun Linyuan. The crown prince wore a black robe and had his hands behind his back. Feng Wu told him that she wanted to see Bao Er. Jun Linyuan studied her. His eyes were so bright that they made Feng Wu nervous. She thought he was going to say no, but he snorted and nodded. Since when was Jun Linyuan so easily persuaded? Feng Wu rubbed her nose and found it hard to believe. She didn't expect to meet Bao Er in this manner. The girl was inside a golden palace. They carefully cleaned themselves before going in. They had to cover their mouths and noses, wear shoe covers, and put on extra robes. Bao Er was on a cold white jade bed. She was tiny. Her face was without color, and she was all skin and bones. She looked lifeless. Seeing Bao Er like this, Feng Wu was filled with guilt. If she hadn't stolen the fruit, maybe Bao Er wouldn't be in this state. Feng Wu wanted to check her pulse, but a person suddenly stepped out and stopped her. She frowned at the stern old maid. The look in the old maid's eyes was as sharp as a dagger. Leave us, Jun Linyuan ordered. The old maid immediately backed away with her head lowered. Feng Wu asked quietly, may I check her pulse? I want to see how she's doing. If it's possible, want to cure her. She wanted to do all she could to make it up to Bao Er. Jun Linyuan gave her a long look and nodded. Feng Wu wiped her hands clean before she checked Bao Er's pulse. She then realized how grave Bao Er's condition was. She had never seen someone so ill. The girl had as many as 20 conditions. There was a lump in her head, and Feng Wu couldn't tell yet if it was malignant. There was something wrong with her nose as well as her throat. Her heart was the most severely affected organ. Bao Er had been born with a heart smaller than usual. Her heartbeat was also slower than a normal person's. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. She tucked Bao Er in and nodded at Jun Linyuan. She let out a sigh after they left the palace. Did you make this golden palace for her? Feng Wu asked curiously. Chapter 2481. You knew. Jun Linyuan gave her a long look and nodded. Before she went into a coma, Bao Er used to want to go out all the time, so I made this golden palace for her. It can be lifted off the ground and carried around. But she's such a kind girl. She said that she didn't want to trouble other people, so she never actually went out in it. Jun Linyuan's voice was still cold, but Feng Wu could tell that he cared about Bao Er. She had never seen him so frustrated. Even Jun Linyuan couldn't have everything he wanted. It pained Feng Wu to see him like this. I've examined Bao Er, Feng Wu said softly. Her condition is very severe. There are at least 20 things going on, and some are more severe than others. The trouble is that when I treat one of them, it may affect her other illnesses. It's very unpredictable. That's also what Master Ling Hu said, Jun Linyuan said calmly. Feng Wu bit her lower lip. She had the impulse to tell him the truth. Maybe he would forgive her. But he could also kill her for what she had done. She didn't know how he would react. She stole a glance at Jun Linyuan. From this angle, he was irresistibly handsome. There was no expression on his face. Guilt overwhelmed Feng Wu when she thought about Bao Er. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. I'm sorry. She bowed at the Golden Palace. Bao Er, I'm sorry for stealing your immortal spiritual fruit. Because of that, you missed your best chance. You've lost a year because of me. I'm not treating you because I want to make you like me. I owe you a life. You're still so young. You should live to walk out of the Golden Palace and see the world with your own eyes. I promise that I'll cure you. You'll grow up as a healthy kid again. Jun Linyuan looked at Feng Wu and smiled a little. One stole your immortal spiritual fruit. Feng Wu met his gaze. One was Feng Xiaowu in northern border city. She closed her eyes. She was ready for his rage. And his powerful strike. But nothing happened. Feng Wu opened her eyes and looked at Jun Linyuan in confusion. Jun Linyuan's eyes glimmered like stars. He wasn't angry. You knew. Feng Wu's stomach lurched. You knew all along, didn't you? Since when? Jun Linyuan didn't answer. He walked into a pavilion and sat down. Intrigued, Feng Wu followed and sat down opposite him. Chapter 2482. His Royal Highness is serious. Granny Gong had trained the servants well. A set of teaware was always out in the pavilion, and the stove was always lit, no matter how often or not the Crown Prince was there. The tea would still be ready even if Jun Linyuan never went there for a whole year. Everything in the residence was well prepared this way. The Crown Prince made some tea and poured some into Feng Wu's cup. Feng Wu held the cup in her hands and went on asking questions. Her eyes looked like pools of water in the moonlight. When did you find out? You cherish Bao Er so much. Don't you hate me for what I did? I lied to you. I thought you would hit me. Feng Wu was perplexed. This wasn't like the Jun Linyuan she thought she knew. Jun Linyuan's eyes twinkled. They were so close that Feng Wu could count his eyelashes. How could someone be so good-looking? Even his hair was nicer than other people's. Even girls would envy his face. How crazy was that? Feng Wu was infatuated. Jun Linyuan poked Feng Wu in the forehead. Feng Wu woke up from her reverie and put on a serious face once more. Jun Linyuan was speechless. It was the bowknot, said Jun Linyuan. What bowknot? Feng Wu was dumbfounded. She searched her memory. She knew what he meant. It was that time. During the entrance examination for Imperial College, she had needed to enter a secret land covered by ice and snow. Jun Linyuan was there as well and was injured. She had tied a bowknot when she treated his wounds. That was over a year ago. You knew all along, but you're not mad at me? I was mad at you. Did you want to kill me? Why not? Feng Wu blurted out, but she realized that she had asked the wrong question. Jun Linyuan was staring at her now. His eyes were frighteningly bright, and she thought she would lose herself in them. Sensing that things were getting out of hand, Feng Wu turned around to run away. Tell me, why wouldn't I? Jun Linyuan asked behind her. There was a hint of anxiety in his voice. Feng Wu felt that his gaze would burn a hole in her back. How awkward. She couldn't run away like this, but she didn't dare turn around either. She wasn't stupid. Before, Jun Linyuan was too proud to speak frankly, but now, he was beginning to express his feelings. For instance, he had used fireworks to put those words in the sky. Feng Wu didn't want to face him. She was scared. Although she was a decisive person when dealing with other things, when it came to her feelings, she was a coward. Answer my question, the Crown Prince teased her. Feng Wu mumbled, how should I know? Chapter 2483. His Royal Highness takes the initiative. When Feng Wu looked up again, she saw that the Crown Prince was standing in front of her. When he took a step forward, she took a step back. Thump! She bumped into a pillar of the pavilion. Jun Linyuan then raised his hands and trapped her in the tiny space between his arms and the pillar. She had nowhere to go now. Gosh! She wished that he wasn't so serious. It made her feel rather awkward. She wanted to push Jun Linyuan away. But of course, the Crown Prince wasn't someone she could easily get rid of. No matter how hard she tried, he didn't move an inch. He decided that he had waited long enough. This girl couldn't run from him forever. He lowered his head and moved closer. Thump! Feng Wu stomped on his foot. Jun Linyuan, stop teasing me. I'm really mad. Feng Wu glared at him. Jun Linyuan didn't know what she wanted. Everyone had been telling him that Feng Wu was in love with him. Whenever he left her alone, she would flirt with him. But when he took the initiative, she couldn't run away fast enough. Feng Wu, what on earth do you want? The Crown Prince snapped. Feng Wu didn't know how to answer that question. The Crown Prince moved closer. Do you have feelings for me or not? Onji. Feng Wu was too shy to answer that question. I don't know what you're talking about. Feng Wu shoved him and wanted to run away, but Jun Linyuan caught her by her wrist. Speak. He stared at her, determined to get an answer out of her today. Feng Wu was so embarrassed that she wanted to dig a hole and hide in it. She might have experienced many things, but she had never been in a relationship before. That question was too direct. Moreover, she still had a crush on her beautiful master. She believed that her master was her real Prince Charming. Don't push me. She glared at Jun Linyuan. You don't get to decide what I want to do. Answer my question, said the Crown Prince. Do you have feelings for me or not? He stared at Feng Wu. An idea struck Feng Wu and she asked, Do you have feelings for me then? That rendered the Crown Prince speechless. He was still feeling perplexed when Feng Wu pushed him away and ran out of the pavilion. She waved at him, saying, Aren't we best friends? Friends? Jun Linyuan's face darkened. Feng Wu said, So, we're best buddies? The Crown Prince said, Say that again and I'll. Feng Wu said, Stop right there. The Crown Prince glared at her. Feng Wu jumped onto the wall and said, I need to go home now. You can figure out the answer and stop pushing me. Bye. She successfully escaped again. Feng and Granny Gong exchanged resigned looks. They had failed again. Luckily, their Crown Prince was a little more motivated than before, although he still had a long way to go before he knew how to express his feelings. I guess things are getting a little better? Feng looked at Granny Gong. Granny Gong didn't know what to say. Chapter 2484. Is her cover blown? Let's just say that good things take a long time to come. We still have to wait for a while before anything happens, but you're right about one thing. His Royal Highness is getting better at expressing himself. It's a good thing. Relationships were seldom straightforward. If neither side would take the first step, the relationship would never go further. The Crown Prince had begun to push Feng Wu now. But it won't be easy to make His Royal Highness admit that he has feelings for Miss Feng Wu, said Granny Gong. The beginning is always the hardest. It'll get easier. Granny Gong and Feng smiled wryly at each other. At the same time, Feng Sun was rushing toward the Crown Prince's residence at top speed. He had many things to tell the Crown Prince. He needed to tell Boss Jun that Feng Wu was the ugly girl. Feng Wu had stolen their immortal spiritual fruit. Feng Wu was the only person who had ever defeated him. How annoying! Feng Sun was going to rush into the house when he paused. No, I can't run inside like this. An idea struck him. The immortal spiritual fruit could have saved Bao Er, who was very dear to Boss Jun. If he learned the truth, he might kill Xiao Wu. Even if he spared Xiao Wu's life, would he drain her blood and give it to Bao? After all, Xiao Wu's blood now contained the ingredients of the fruit. Gosh! Would Xiao Wu survive that? Feng Sun grew anxious. Although he had been very angry when he first heard the news, she was still his younger sister. He was still angry at her for what she did. But he didn't want her to be harmed either. He stomped his foot, turned around and ran in a different direction. Fallen Star Yard. Little Feng Wu, get your ass over here. Feng Sun jumped over the wall and into the yard, and rushed into the house. Feng Wu's formation was designed not to stop Feng Sun, so he wasn't hindered. Sun, you're here. Lady Ling was glad to see him. She liked Feng Sun for his liveliness. She thought that Jun Linyuan frowned too much. Aunt Ling. Feng Sun immediately slowed down when he saw Lady Ling. For some reason, Lady Ling gave him the feeling that she was even more distinguished than His Majesty. He couldn't explain it. It was instinctual. When Lady Ling was around, he was very polite. Aunt Ling, where is Xiao Wu? Feng Sun forced a smile. Lady Ling pointed at the courtyard next door. She's cultivating. Aunt Ling, I'll go talk to her. Feng Sun was such a good boy in front of Lady Ling, but when he jumped over the wall and landed in the courtyard of the Feng Manor, he looked like he was going to kill someone. He found Feng Wu in an old tree. She exhaled when she finished cultivating. Little Feng Wu, you're such a devil. Get down here right now. Feng Sun pointed at Feng Wu. Feng Wu felt a little guilty. Chapter 2485. He's going to kill you. She wondered if her cover was blown. But she had to face it sooner or later. She couldn't run from it forever. Feng Wu jumped out of the tree and met Feng Sun's gaze. She was ready to embrace the storm. Feng Sun stared at Feng Wu like there were flames in his eyes. Tell me the truth, are you Feng Xiaowu of Northern Border City? Feng Sun said matter-of-factly, I. What kind of an answer was that? Feng Sun wanted to smack her on the head. Think very carefully before you answer. Are you really the ugly girl who stole Boss Jun's immortal spiritual fruit? Feng Wu said, I. Stop with the I already. You really are her. Feng Wu said, yes really. Feng Sun said, why did you admit it so fast? Aren't you afraid of me? He suddenly felt that he was even more reluctant to face the truth. How could that be? Feng Wu. Feng Sun shouted, why do you sound so righteous? Do you remember what you did? Feng Wu listened in silence. Feng Sun grew angrier as he went on. I was so nice to you, and I promised Boss Jun that I would take responsibility for everything you did. And what did you do? Is that how you repay my kindness? Feng Wu said, Feng Sun raised his voice. You stole the immortal spiritual fruit. How could you? Do you know why we needed that fruit? Bao Er was dying. You stole the fruit, and Bao Er has been lying there ever since. I can't believe it. I'm so sorry, Feng Wu tugged on his sleeve and said in a pitiful tone. Feng Sun stared at her. It's too late for that. Feng Wu wailed a little. Feng Sun frowned at her. He was genuinely angry, because his sister had crossed the line. However, when she took his hand with that lost puppy look on her face, he couldn't bring himself to shout at her, let alone smack her. On his way here, Feng Sun had decided that he would teach Feng Wu a lesson. Brother Feng Wu looked like an abandoned kitten. Feng Sun took a deep breath and glared at Feng Wu. Do you know what you've done wrong? Feng Wu said, yes, I do. Feng Sun said, that was fast. Feng Wu chuckled. Feng Sun glared at her. You shouldn't be laughing. Feng Wu whimpered. Feng Sun didn't know what to say. When he saw her big eyes and adorable face, he couldn't bring himself to say anything harsh. He said, I can live with the fact that you've lied to me, but do you know how serious the consequence is? The fruit was supposed to be Bao Er's medicine. If Boss Jun knows that you are the ugly girl, he'll kill you. Feng Wu said, I don't think so. Chapter 2486, Untitled. Feng Sun said, you don't think so? If he's angry enough, he'll kill your entire family. Just remember, don't let Boss Jun know. Feng Wu was touched. Feng Sun was Jun Linyuan's most loyal friend, but to protect Feng Wu, he chose to hide the truth from Jun Linyuan. It was a hard choice for Feng Sun. Feng Wu said, "He already knows." Feng Sun said, "You can't let him." "What did you just say?" Feng Wu said, "He already knows." "Oh my God!" Feng Sun was so shocked that he almost fell over. His first reaction was to push Feng Wu toward the front gate. "You should leave now. Don't bother packing. Just run as fast as you can." Feng Wu said, "It's all right. He." Feng Sun said, "Of course it's not all right. He's going to kill you." Feng Wu said, "He didn't get angry at me." Feng Sun stared at her. "Are you sure?" Feng Wu said, "Moreover, I've seen Bao Er in the Golden Palace." Feng Sun looked her up and down, trying to make sure that she wasn't harmed. "You?" He hesitated. "Are you sure he really knows?" Feng Wu nodded. Feng Sun said, "And you're still all right?" Feng Wu nodded. Feng Sun asked, "Did he do anything to you?" Define anything, thought Feng Wu. He had pressed her against a pillar, so she hesitated for a moment. Feng Sun took a deep breath. "Stay put. I'll go see Boss Jun now." He dashed off after that. A moment later he paused. He then smacked his head. That wasn't right. He was here to tell Feng Wu off, but right now he was protecting her. How incredible! But that he decided that his top priority was her safety. He ran to the Crown Prince's residence. Boss Jun, did you know that Xiao Dubu, Jun Linyuan was cultivating when Feng Sun rushed into the room? Jun Linyuan glanced at him and went back to his training. Feng Sun was worried sick by the time Jun Linyuan finished. Only then did Jun Linyuan put on a robe and walk out of the hot spring. Boss Jun, did you really know already? Feng Sun asked anxiously. Yes, Jun Linyuan said calmly. Feng Sun was shocked. Are you not going to kill her? Jun Linyuan found the question idiotic. He lay down on a chair and used his spiritual essence to dry his hair. How is that possible? You care about Bao Er so much. If it wasn't for Xiao Wu, Bao Er wouldn't have. She's going to make it up to me. The Crown Prince sipped his wine. With what? Herself, said the Crown Prince confidently. Hearing that, Feng wanted to shake his head. If only things were that easy. Of course, as the steward, he would never say that out loud. He didn't even frown. Chapter 2487 Untitled. Feng Sun stared at Jun Linyuan. Boss Jun, did she really say that? Did she agree to use herself as compensation if she can't cure Bao Er? The Crown Prince nodded. Feng Sun let out a breath of relief. That's great. I was so worried that you would kill her. Feng found Feng Sun's worry to be utterly idiotic. Kill Feng Wu. His Royal Highness would probably kill himself first. Just then, someone outside called, Your Royal Highness, Miss Qingwan is requesting an audience. Zhui Qingwan. Feng Sun was surprised. Boss Jun, I didn't know that you were still talking to her. As Jun Linyuan's future brother-in-law, Feng Sun immediately raised his guard. Jun Linyuan was about to turn down the request, when the servant said, Your Royal Highness, here's a letter from Miss Qingwan. Jun Linyuan quickly read it. His face darkened a little when he read one of the lines, and he said, Bring her in. Feng Sun was curious about what had changed Jun Linyuan's mind. He grabbed the letter and saw that Zhui Qingwan said that she was here to see Bao Er on behalf of her master. Can Zhui Qingwan help Bao Er? Feng Sun asked suspiciously. Jun Linyuan said, I don't know, but her master did indeed help Bao Er once. Feng Sun said, So, you owe her a favor? Jun Linyuan nodded. Feng Sun asked, Haven't you returned the favor yet? Jun Linyuan snorted. Do you think she'll let me off the hook so easily? Feng Sun nodded. You have a point. Of course, she would save it for something more important. What a cunning old hag. Zhui Qingwan arrived at that moment. She held her head high, looking as proud as a peacock. However, that wouldn't impress anyone in this residence. On her way in, she saw that the servants were busy with their own work, and no one even glanced at her. That displeased Zhuo Qingyuan. When she entered the main hall, Jun Linyuan had already changed into his formal attire. Zhuo Qingyuan had thought that after everything Jun Linyuan had put her through, she would feel angry when she met him again. However, she couldn't help but be awed by his handsome face. Her heart pounded. Jun Linyuan glanced at her. "Are you here to deliver a message for your master?" "Yes." Zhuo Qingyuan wanted to show him her best side. Every move she made seemed to be carefully measured, from her tone to her gait. One couldn't find a more refined young lady. She was as graceful as a queen. She believed that the crown prince would surely be impressed. Poor Zhuo Qingyuan. She had no idea that Jun Linyuan would prefer Feng Wu's pouting face over any of her well-trained demeanor. Needless to say, Jun Linyuan wasn't impressed. Neither was Feng Sun. He found Zhuo Qingyuan so pretentious. "What's the message then?" he urged her. Chapter 2488 Jun Linyuan vs. Zhuo Qingyuan. Zhuo Qingyuan glanced at Feng Sun. She wondered if Feng Sun had told the crown prince about the ugly girl. But the crown prince didn't seem angry, so she assumed that Jun Linyuan still didn't know. Zhuo Qingyuan said, "After my master examined Bao Er, she said that the immortal spiritual fruit could save her. Your Royal Highness, did you find it?" Hearing that, Feng Sun knew what she was getting at. Before, he had found Zhuo Qingyuan to be a pretty and smart girl. He used to like her because she was such a fast learner. However, after what she did recently, Feng Sun began to dislike her. And that question. Of all things, why would she ask about the immortal spiritual fruit? She was obviously trying to incriminate Feng Wu. When Zhuo Qingyuan asked the question, she was looking at Feng Sun out of the corner of her eye. She thought that she had provided Feng Sun with the best opportunity. Why wouldn't he use it? Zhuo Qingyuan urged Feng Sun with her eyes. Feng Sun smirked. He knew that she wanted to use him, and found her plan ridiculous. Zhuo Qingyuan frowned. She didn't understand it. According to Mu Yaoyao, Feng Wu had put Feng Sun in a miserable state. Wouldn't he want to take revenge? It was said that Feng Sun always made his enemy pay. Zhuo Qingyuan stared at Feng Sun. Feng Sun snorted. "Are you trying to use me to defeat Feng Wu?" he thought. "Aren't you supposed to be the sacred lady with no worldly desires? You're very keen on eliminating your enemy now." Feng Sun returned her gaze with a mocking smile on his face. Zhuo Qingyuan was furious, but she was very good at controlling her emotions. When she turned to look at Jun Linyuan, there was already an affectionate look in her eyes. "We'll have a much better chance to cure Bao Er if we have the immortal spiritual fruit. I was told that Feng Wu seems to have one." Zhuo Qingyuan cut to the chase. Feng Sun wanted to protect Feng Wu, but Zhuo Qingyuan wouldn't let him. Feng Wu had to die. "I see." Jun Linyuan picked up his cup. That was a sign that the meeting was over. Zhuo Qingyuan flushed. "Damn you, Feng Wu. What did you put in His Royal Highness's head? With you around, I'll never win him back." At that thought, Zhuo Qingyuan stepped forward and said, "I heard that your Royal Highness knows Feng Wu well. Why don't we talk to her and borrow the fruit?" To her disappointment, the crown prince didn't react. Wasn't he supposed to be very smart? The crown prince glanced at Zhuo Qingyuan and asked coldly, "What are you getting at?" Zhuo Qingyuan said, "A year ago, Feng Wu stole the immortal spiritual fruit from you." She then kept her gaze on Jun Linyuan, trying to read his thoughts. But his face remained expressionless. Zhuo Qingyuan's hands grew cold. Why wouldn't he understand? "So?" Jun Linyuan asked indifferently. Feng Sun almost burst out laughing. Chapter 2489 Jun Linyuan vs. Feng Wu. Feng Sun couldn't understand it. Zhuo Qingyuan was so smart, but why did she behave like an idiot around Boss Jun? Zhuo Qingyuan already knew the answer, but she didn't want to admit it. Because if she did, it would mean that His Royal Highness cared about Feng Wu more than Bao Er. Back then, she had barely touched Bao Er, and the crown prince had looked like he was going to kill her. However, now that Feng Wu had taken the immortal spiritual fruit that could save Bao Er, he wasn't even angry. She assumed that he didn't know anything about it. Zhuo Qingwan said, although it's been a year, the effect of the immortal spiritual fruit is still in Feng Wu's blood. If we use her blood as the base of... Before she could finish, she felt a cold gaze on her. Her chest tightened. It was as if her heart was being squeezed, and the pain made her suck in her breath. The temperature seemed to drop, as if it was going to snow. It was freezing. Zhuo Qingwan glanced at Jun Linyuan. She saw his brooding eyes, and she almost shivered. He knew. Zhuo Qingwan realized that she had to admit the truth. Jun Linyuan knew that Feng Wu was the ugly girl, but he wasn't angry. This shouldn't be happening. Zhuo Qingwan wanted to cry. This had been her best chance. She had thought that by playing this card, she would get rid of Feng Wu forever, but... Was Feng Wu even human? His Royal Highness is fond of... There's no way that's it. I'll never admit that His Royal Highness is in love with Feng Wu. He's like this only because she's pretty. At that thought, Zhuo Qingwan took a deep breath and fought back her anger. Zhuo Qingwan, calm down. Feng Wu is only a small obstacle in your life. You were able to crush her 5 years ago, you can still crush her now. When Zhuo Qingwan opened her eyes, she was the unapproachable sacred lady once more. She bade the crown prince farewell and left the residence. She looked perfectly calm again. Feng Sun spat on the ground as soon as Zhuo Qingwan was gone. I thought she was here to treat Bao Er, but she was actually here to accuse my Xiao Wu. My Xiao Wu? The crown prince glanced at Feng Sun. Feng Sun immediately came back to his senses. I mean your Xiao Wu. He didn't think Boss Jun would respond, but the latter actually nodded. He nodded. Feng Sun almost jumped. He couldn't believe his eyes. When Jun Linyuan walked away, Feng Sun didn't follow him. Instead, he grabbed Feng's sleeve. Feng, did you see that? Boss Jun nodded, right? Feng said yes. Feng Sun scratched his head. So, I was right. Boss Jun finally admits that he has feelings for little Feng Wu. It was a turning point. Chapter 2490. He promised to marry me. Zhuo Qingwan went back to Phoenix Yard. Tong Kai greeted her. She thought that after the amazing information she had gathered, the sacred lady would be able to defeat Feng Wu. However, Phoenix Yard was destroyed once more. Tong Kai felt that she had lost count of her master's tantrums. After Zhuo Qingwan was done venting her rage, Tong Kai summoned the servants. In less than an hour, Phoenix Yard was as good as new. When a maid walked past Tong Kai, she whispered, Miss Tong Kai, we're running out of new furniture. Get lost. Tong Kai said impatiently. If the sacred lady heard that, she would kill all of them. The maid bit her lower lip and quickly left. Tong Kai took a deep breath and went inside. Feng Wu, I'm impressed. Zhuo Qingwan smacked the table, her face twitching. I didn't think she would pose any sort of threat when I returned. I wouldn't have even bothered to glance at her. But what a surprise. She has put on quite the show. Zhuo Qingwan suddenly rose to her feet. Tong Kai wanted to say something, but hesitated. She wanted to remind the sacred lady that when she first returned, the rumor she spread was that the crown prince was deeply in love with her. Now, however, she and Feng Wu were competing over the crown prince. Zhuo Qingwan glared at Tong Kai. What's on your mind? Are you laughing at me? She sounded frustrated. Tong Kai sighed inwardly, but she feigned a terrified tone and knelt down. Miss Qingwan, I don't know anything. Zhuo Qingwan took a deep breath. She forced herself to calm down. She told herself, Zhuo Qingwan, you're the best. You have the true phoenix blood, and you're the one His Royal Highness is going to marry. Other women can never threaten your position. The crown prince's reaction had ruined Zhuo Qingwan's plan. She had thought that all she needed to do was marry Jun Linyuan, but now he wouldn't even look at her. She glared at Tong Kai. I know what you're thinking. Tong Kai gritted her teeth and hoped that the sacred lady wouldn't say the unspeakable. Zhuo Qingwan only smirked. Feng Wu has seduced His Royal Highness, but it doesn't matter. All men like pretty girls, but that will pass. At the end of the day, he'll still be mine. Of course, said Tongke. She would never disagree with her master. Zhuo Qingwan seemed to be convincing herself. I have the true phoenix blood. Tongke said, yes, and all princes want to marry you. Zhuo Qingwan nodded and said coldly, but I want to marry His Royal Highness. Tongke was speechless. Even the vendors outside know what you want, she thought. Zhuo Qingwan stressed, he promised that he would marry me. That's why I'm doing this. Tongke could only keep nodding. Zhuo Qingwan was trying to convince Tongke as well as herself. Chapter 2491 Empress Dowager. Zhuo Qingwan insisted that Jun Linyuan had made the promise first, and she was only asking him to keep his promise. She sat down and started thinking. It would be very difficult to try and change Jun Linyuan's mind. Zhuo Qingwan then thought about Feng Sun and wondered if she could work on him. She had thought about it before. She would befriend Feng Sun and ask him to support her. That way, she would make a good impression on the crown prince. It was a good idea, but she couldn't use it, because Feng Wu had beaten her to it. Zhuo Qingwan gritted her teeth. Feng Wu, you keep saying that you're not in love with His Royal Highness, but you made friends with Feng Sun first and used him to get to His Royal Highness. How cunning! Since His Royal Highness's friend wouldn't work, she had to work on his family instead. Bao Er. Zhuo Qingwan shook her head. She wasn't capable enough at the moment to treat Bao Er. His Royal Highness's mother had passed away, and he didn't see eye to eye with His Majesty. That left her with only one candidate. The Empress Dowager. The old lady doted on the crown prince, and she was the only person whom Jun Linyuan was patient with. Zhuo Qingwan concluded that Jun Linyuan would definitely listen to the Empress Dowager. As long as she agreed. Zhuo Qingwan smiled a little. It seemed that she was going to visit the royal palace. She never did things that she wasn't confident about. To win over the Empress Dowager, she made a lot of preparations in advance. She needed to figure out what the old lady liked and disliked. The Zhuo family would help her with that. Mrs. Zhuo's eyes lit up when she heard the plan. Finally, her daughter was going to do something. She had been so proud, but now she was asking about the Empress Dowager's preferences. What Mrs. Zhuo didn't know was that this was all part of Zhuo Qingwan's plan. She would never willingly fawn over any person. Zhuo Qingwan had no real respect for the Empress Dowager. But her hands were tied, and she had to do things she hated. For other people, it would be very difficult to meet the Empress Dowager. But the Zhuo family could visit the Empress Dowager almost whenever they wanted. Mrs. Zhuo took Zhuo Qingwan to Empress Dugu's palace first. Empress Dugu was pleased when Zhuo Qingwan, the sacred lady of Firmament Palace, came to pay her respects to her. Zhuo Qingwan was also her niece. Empress Dugu then took Zhuo Qingwan to see the Empress Dowager. Sinane Palace. The sacred lady? The Empress Dowager frowned a little. She remembered Zhuo Qingwan. The girl had been very proud since she was little. She behaved more like a princess than Jun Wuxia. The Empress Dowager didn't like girls who were too proud, so she didn't think much of Zhuo Qingwan. Two elderly maids served the Empress Dowager. One was Granny Lan. She was mild-tempered and rather liked Feng Wu. The other one was Granny Gui, who got along well with Empress Dugu. Chapter 2492 Zhuo Qingwan fawns on the Empress Dowager. Granny Gui said, Miss Qingwan has the true phoenix blood. If His Royal Highness marries her, their children will have both bloodlines. Your Majesty, aren't you searching for a wife for His Royal Highness? Maybe Miss Qingwan can be a candidate. The Empress Dowager frowned. She only gestured at the servants to bring Empress Dugu and the others in. Empress Dugu was chuckling when she walked in. The Empress Dowager frowned because she didn't like Empress Dugu. She wanted to protect Jun Linyuan, but Empress Dugu had never been friendly toward him, so the Empress Dowager had never liked her daughter-in-law. Empress Dugu knew that as well, but her family was here, so she had to pretend that she and the Empress Dowager were very close. Otherwise, it would be so humiliating. "Your Majesty, how was your day?" Empress Dugu greeted her mother-in-law. The Empress Dowager glanced at Empress Dugu but soon looked past her. She was looking at the people behind Empress Dugu, Mrs. Zhua and Zhua Qingwan. The Empress Dowager had expected Zhua Qingwan to be as arrogant as she used to be, but she was wrong. When she looked at Zhua Qingwan, the girl was smiling. The smile? The Empress Dowager couldn't believe her eyes. She looked again. Zhua Qingwan was smiling sweetly at her. The Empress Dowager's heart almost skipped a beat. The arrogant girl from 5 years ago was fawning on the Empress Dowager. What a bright smile. The Empress Dowager hadn't liked the idea of marrying Zhua Qingwan to Jun Linyuan at first since the boy was already very cold. If his wife was equally cold, what would their life be like? The Empress Dowager was looking for a considerate girl with a warm smile. Right now, Miss Zhua looked like a suitable candidate. "Are you Zhua Qingwan?" The Empress Dowager was a little intrigued. "Yes, Your Majesty." Zhua Qingwan slowly walked up to the Empress Dowager and bowed. "How graceful." The Empress Dowager and Granny Gui exchanged looks, and both were pleasantly surprised. Her movements were so accurate it was like they had been measured with a ruler. The girl looked like she was born to live in the palace. "Your Majesty, here's some snowy cream my master made for you." Firmament Palace was good at making both medicines and poisons. Zhua Qingwan knew that all women loved things that made them more beautiful. Although the Empress Dowager was an elderly woman, she still spent hours on skincare every day. Zhua Qingwan had chosen the perfect gift for her. The Empress Dowager was surprised to see the gift. "Snowy cream? I use it all the time, but this one smells fresher." Zhua Qingwan nodded. The snowy cream sold in Firmament Pavilion has a similar formula, but the ones sold elsewhere are made by ordinary people, so they are not as effective. Chapter 2493 Preparing to Marry Jun Linyuan. "Your Majesty, this snowy cream was made by my master, and is the same cream that she uses every day. My master said that Your Majesty and her were best friends when you were young. Although the two of you haven't met each other for many years, she still cares about Your Majesty." Zhua Qingwan studied the Empress Dowager as she spoke. She didn't expect that the old lady would like her right away. As long as the Empress Dowager liked her better than before, she would achieve results. The Empress Dowager looked pleased when she heard that the master of Firmament Palace still cared about her. And the snowy cream was a very considerate gift. Seeing that Zhua Qingwan wasn't as arrogant as she had expected, the Empress Dowager wasn't as indifferent as before. "Take a seat," said the Empress Dowager. Despite the change in her attitude, the Empress Dowager wasn't that easily impressed. It would take more than a few gifts to melt her heart. "Wait, is Zhua Qingwan here?" Jun Wuxia was there as well, and was surprised to see Zhua Qingwan. Zhua Qingwan nodded at her. "That's the deluxe version of the snowy cream." "Zhua Qingwan, did you give it to Grandma?" Jun Wuxia asked curiously. Zhua Qingwan nodded. She didn't like Jun Wuxia because the princess was too proud for her liking. While other people called her Miss Qingwan, Jun Wuxia kept addressing her by her full name. Jun Wuxia stared at Zhua Qingwan. "Hey, why isn't there something for me?" "Wuxia." Empress Dugu chided her. Jun Wuxia snorted. "I see. She's sucking up to Grandma." Zhua Qingwan bit her lower lip and disliked Jun Wuxia even more. The Empress Dowager looked from Zhua Qingwan to Jun Wuxia. She didn't say anything, but there was a pointed look in her eyes. Zhua Qingwan had always considered herself the respectable sacred lady of Firmament Palace. Now, however, a mere princess was talking to her that way. Zhua Qingwan was furious. However, she couldn't lose her temper now. To marry Jun Linyuan, she had to win these women's hearts first. At that thought, she took a deep breath and fought back her rage. She then smiled at Jun Wuxia. "I still have a bottle in Firmament Pavilion. I thought I would keep it for Her Majesty for future use. Would you like me to fetch it for you?" she asked Jun Wuxia. Jun Wuxia snorted. "If you don't want to give it to me, Just say so. Are you trying to say that I'm taking Her Majesty's face cream? Zhuo Qingwan, you're such a schemer. Zhuo Qingwan glared at Jun Wuxia and took a deep breath. She didn't know what to do with this rude princess. She couldn't control her temper for much longer. Empress Dugu wanted to cover her daughter's mouth and stop her from attacking one of their own. She smiled awkwardly and said, "The two of you are cousins. Why are you quarreling? Wuxia, didn't you say that Qingwan is your best friend? You went to her birthday party just the other day." Chapter 2494 Untitled. That only made Jun Wuxia even more frustrated. She felt that she should never have gone to Zhuo Qingwan's birthday party. Jun Wuxia had only been there because Feng Wu was her enemy. Since Feng Wu was protected by the crown prince, Jun Wuxia had to condescend to hang out with Zhuo Qingwan. If Zhuo Qingwan won back the crown prince's heart, Jun Wuxia felt that she could then take care of Feng Wu. But things didn't turn out that way. "Don't even mention that birthday party," Jun Wuxia snapped. "I thought my brother was going to be there, but he wasn't." Zhuo Qingwan's face immediately darkened. She had never been humiliated like this before. Jun Wuxia was a spoiled child and had always gotten her way, so she just blurted out whatever was on her mind. She saw Zhuo Qingwan's dark face and smirked. "I thought you would win my brother back from Feng Wu, but look what happened." Emperor Wu arrived at that moment to see his mother. Hearing the conversation, he told the eunuch not to announce his arrival. He hid behind a curtain and listened. Jun Wuxia glared at Zhuo Qingwan. "As it turned out, my brother went to the Feng clan." "How do you know that?" The Empress Dowager stared at Jun Wuxia. Jun Wuxia said, "Dugu Menghai was given the order to arrest Feng Wu, but his cultivation ability was destroyed as a result. My mom is from the Dugu family, which is why I know." The Empress Dowager frowned at Empress Dugu. "Is that true?" Empress Dugu nodded with a pale face. What happened to Dugu Menghai was a hard blow to the Dugu family, and Zhuo Qingwan was the main reason behind it. After what happened to Dugu Menghai, Zhuo Qingwan became their only hope. The Empress Dowager was infuriated. "Junjun and Feng Wu." Jun Wuxia said, "And that's not all. My brother gave out gift envelopes to everyone in the imperial capital. He spent a fortune for Feng Wu's birthday." "What?" The Empress Dowager smacked the table. Zhuo Qingwan turned pale. The crown prince was supposed to be angry at Feng Wu, which would make Zhuo Qingwan happy. However, the more Jun Linyuan cared about Feng Wu, the more humiliated Zhuo Qingwan felt. She clenched her fists in her sleeves. She wanted to scream. She was supposed to be respected by everyone and not treated like this. Zhuo Qingwan rose to her feet. Empress Dugu suddenly said, "Qingwan is very blessed." Where did that come from? Everyone looked at her. Empress Dugu chuckled. Master Linghu himself said that Qingwan is very fortunate and blessed. Master Linghu said so. The Empress Dowager immediately remembered something. She had wanted to be the first precant of the year, but Master Linghu had said that he was going to give that opportunity to a very blessed child. The Empress Dowager had been wondering who that child was. "Did Master Linghu call you a blessed child?" The Empress Dowager stared at Zhuo Qingwan. Chapter 2495 Why Did I Hear? Empress Dugu kept giving Zhuo Qingwan warning looks, trying to remind her that she should grab this great opportunity. "Did Master Linghu call you a blessed child?" the Empress Dowager asked Zhuo Qingwan. Given how smart Zhuo Qingwan was, she obviously knew that the Empress Dowager didn't like Feng Wu. Now was the best time to win the old lady's heart. As for being a blessed child, she was the sacred lady of Firmament Palace and the daughter of the Zhuo family who was born with the true phoenix blood. Of course she was blessed. Therefore, she nodded. She nodded. The Empress Dowager was shocked. "You were the first precant of the year. Master Linghu chose you." She stared at Zhuo Qingwan. Zhuo Qingwan was baffled. What first precant? Before she could ask, Empress Dugu answered the question for her. "That's right. Master Linghu called Qingwan a blessed child. She was also the first precant of the year." Your Majesty, what do you think of her? The Empress Dowager was speechless. It was Zhuo Qinghuan. She hadn't expected that. She didn't answer the question. However, Emperor Wu, who had been standing behind the door curtain, was astonished. How could Zhuo Qinghuan be so vain? The little monk of Wandering Temple had gone to Fallen Star Yard, and Feng Wu had been the one whom Master Ling Hu had chosen. How did Zhuo Qinghuan have anything to do with that? He cleared his throat. My son is here. The Empress Dowager was glad to see Emperor Wu. Emperor Wu greeted the Empress Dowager and smiled. I heard your cheerful conversation from miles away. What's the occasion? The Empress Dowager said happily, I found the lucky child who was chosen to be the first precant of the year. Emperor Wu asked, who was it? Empress Dugu gestured at Zhuo Qinghuan. Your Majesty, it was Qinghuan. Isn't she pretty? She'll make the perfect wife for His Royal Highness. Master Ling Hu has acknowledged her great quality. Emperor Wu thought that Feng Wu was better looking. As for becoming Jun Lingyuan's wife, that wasn't going to happen. She was vain enough to claim an honor that wasn't hers, so what kind of quality could she have? Of course, Emperor Wu wouldn't be so straightforward. He only glanced at Zhuo Qinghuan and said, so, you were Wandering Temple's first precant of this year. Zhuo Qinghuan didn't know what to say. She knew what becoming the first precant meant, but the chance of pleasing the Empress Dowager was too tempting. So, she had let Empress Dugu mislead the Empress Dowager. Now that Emperor Wu had asked the question specifically, Zhuo Qinghuan took a deep breath and nodded. Yes, it was me. No, it wasn't. Emperor Wu wanted to shout at Zhuo Qinghuan. If Master Ling Hu knew what she was doing, he would probably slap her. The girl had spread the rumor first, making everyone believe that Jun Lingyuan was in love with her. Now, she was laying claim to something that she didn't do. That was despicable. Emperor Wu didn't lose his temper. Instead, he asked, why did I hear that the first precant of Wandering Temple was Feng Wu? Chapter 2496 The Best Way. What? Everyone was astonished when they heard Emperor Wu's words. Feng Wu? How did Feng Wu have anything to do with it? The Empress Dowager stared at Emperor Wu. You shouldn't joke about such things. Feng Wu would never deserve such an honor. Emperor Wu was displeased. That girl had saved the Empress Dowager many times. Without her, the old lady wouldn't be chatting here now. However, being a loving son, Emperor Wu couldn't say that to his mother's face. Otherwise, she would cry her eyes out. Empress Dugu and Zhuo Qinghuan gave each other astonished looks. Feng Wu? How could it be her? Was it possible that His Royal Highness had helped Feng Wu to grab that chance? In that case, Zhuo Qinghuan would be so humiliated. Just then, concubine Oriole walked toward Emperor Wu with her hands on her bulging belly. Your Majesty, that's not possible. Feng Wu can't be. She suddenly slipped and lost her balance. Ah! She fell to the floor. She was 8 months pregnant, and her belly was as round as a ball. It just so happened that she fell face first. Ah! Concubine Oriole screamed in pain. Oriole, Emperor Wu ran to her side. How do you feel? Are you all right? Get the physician. Concubine Oriole had the voice of a singing oriole, and Emperor Wu quite liked her. It had been a while since one of his women had a baby, and he was rather looking forward to this one. But that fall, Emperor Wu felt his blood run cold. He looked at Zhuo Qinghuan. She was too far away to touch concubine Oriole, and it wouldn't be reasonable to suspect her. But Emperor Wu still glanced at Gao. Gao nodded, indicating that he would look into. Master Bai soon arrived. He said that concubine Oriole shouldn't be moved around, and it was better to treat her right on the spot. For the baby's safety, the Empress Dowager gave permission to have concubine Oriole treated in Xining Palace. Master Bai, how's the baby? Emperor Wu asked. Master Bai shook his head. The pregnancy is quite advanced, and things can be tricky. Your Majesty, we need to prepare for the worst. Master Chu also arrived. After examining the patient, he reported to Emperor Wu. Emperor Wu trusted him. He asked, how is she? Is the baby safe? Master Chu took a deep breath. Your Majesty, in the worst-case scenario, who will be the priority? The mother or the baby? Emperor Wu asked. Is it that serious? Master Chu nodded. Which will it be then? Before Emperor Wu could reply, the Empress Dowager said coldly, Concubine Oriole was so careless and put the baby's life in danger. If something happens to the little prince, she'll pay with her own life. You shouldn't be asking that question. But Emperor Wu still had feelings for his concubine. Zhuo Qingwan was intrigued. She thought about the question Emperor Wu had asked her, and wondered if he knew something. The best way to stop him from asking the question was... Chapter 2497a. The best way to do that was to do the emperor a favor. Zhuo Qingwan knew that if she could save concubine Oriole and the baby, Emperor Wu would be grateful for what she did and would stop questioning her. She was indeed the culprit who had tripped concubine Oriole. I can help her, Zhuo Qingwan said calmly. Firmament Palace is known for its medical skills. I'm the Sacred Lady, and I specialize in medicine. She turned to Emperor Wu. If your Majesty wants to keep both the lady and the baby alive, I'm the only one who can help them. Emperor Wu studied her. The truth was that he didn't trust her, hence. Gao, go get Miss Feng Wu. That order felt like a slap to Zhuo Qingwan's face. Why was this even happening? Why would Emperor Wu trust Feng Wu but not her? Your Majesty. Zhuo Qingwan revered Emperor Wu, but her desire for Jun Linyuan prevailed. She said, I'm a semi-supreme level physician and will soon be at the supreme level. Why would Feng Wu? Semi? Emperor Wu smirked. Feng Wu passed that level a long time ago. What was that supposed to mean? Zhuo Qingwan was dumbfounded at first. Then, the Empress Dowager said, that's right. Go get Feng Wu. She's the best candidate for the job. What? Zhuo Qingwan's cheeks flushed with fury. She remembered the information Tong Ke had given her. It mentioned that Feng Wu had treated the Empress Dowager a few times with the assistance of Master Chu, and now, Master Chu was here. Zhuo Qingwan stared at Emperor Wu, and her eyes glinted. She had been humiliated, and she would have her revenge. She quickly hatched a plan. Empress Dugu was also embarrassed. She led Zhuo Qingwan to the side and whispered, Feng Wu is indeed a capable physician. Don't take the risk. Zhuo Qingwan smirked. So what if Feng Wu was already a supreme-level physician? Other than medical skills, Firmament Palace was also great at something else, assassination. Their undead insects could kill a person without leaving a trace. Sure, Zhuo Qingwan replied. She was so good at controlling her emotions that even Empress Dugu couldn't see how furious she actually was. Master Chu and Master Bai were doing their best to help concubine Oriole. Zhuo Qingwan lowered her gaze. She had done more than just trip concubine Oriole. Without her intervention, both mother and baby would die today. In the end, the emperor would still have to ask for her help. That thought greatly satisfied Zhuo Qingwan. Inside, the midwife was doing all she could to get the baby out. But concubine Oriole couldn't go into labor, and the pain was excruciating. She screamed at the top of her lungs. Gradually, her voice became weaker. Master Chu came out with his face covered in sweat. Your Majesty, the lady is in critical condition, and I really need a hand. Emperor Wu gritted his teeth. Feng Wu isn't here yet. The Empress Dowager said, it's been almost 5 minutes. Where is she? That you're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.